The Western Sydney Wanderers broke their 364-day winless drought last week when they knocked off Melbourne City in the upset of the season. Today, they attempt to back it up against another top-of-the-table side at Wanderers Football Park. Western United have been perfect in their first Liberty A-League season, 7 wins from 7 games, with their boss Mark Torcaso awarded Coach of the Month honours, all of which begs the question, who can beat this Western United side? Welcome to Dub Zone, our interactive coverage of the Liberty A-League season. It is awesome to have your company this Saturday, Arvo. I'm Neve Owens, and it is lovely to say hello for my first time on the Dub Zone couch, Canberra United legend Grace Gill. Hello, Gigi.
Great to be here with you, Neve. Great to get my spot back on the couch, so thanks for having me.
So good to see you again. And Kat Haddad, always awesome to see you, our socials expert. Hello.
Hello, hello. Proud to make my 8th cap for Dub Zone. Is this your third?
This is my third cap, my third
Yeah.
appearance.
Yeah, basically a regular at this
Oh, thanks.
point.
I appreciate that.
Strong appearance. Also 8 Dub Zone caps deep and a whole heap of Liberty A-League games deep. Teo Palizzeri, hello.
Top of the afternoon to you, Neve.
You even dressed like a leprechaun. It's great. I appreciate it very much, Teo. Always good to see you, and I'm looking forward to your call this afternoon. We talked already off the top, Cat, about our Coach of the Month honours in Mark Torcaso. Player of the Month, it was a deeper list to choose from, 10 players on it. Who topped it?
Well, like you said, there was an extensive list that we went through last week and we did our little votes and everything like that. But in the end, it was Maria Jose Rojas who's taken out Player of the Month for December, which is amazing. She came in as an injury replacement for Hannah Wilkinson, has had an absolutely stunning start to the season. And obviously December was fantastic performance from her. So it's great to see, but there were many players who have been playing incredibly alongside her, that's for sure.
I feel like it's been confirmed, Teo, just how important she has been. Obviously, like injury replacement signing, but has absolutely made that spot her own. And City have not looked like the same side in her absence.
Yeah, it's been both individual output, but also her effect on how the team plays stylistically, Grace, because the switch to Hannah Wilkinson has not coincided with an improved level of performance from Melbourne City.
No, I think they're also missing Ekic a little bit in that combination up front, but certainly Rojas was integral to that performance from City.
So that was last week's discussion point. What are we talking about this week?
Well, the discussion point this week is also something that I feel has come up a couple of times between us, and it's this Western United side and the fact that they are so far undefeated in their first season. The question is, who can beat Western United and break this unbeaten streak? Because they're obviously playing incredibly well. There's also the option to let us know if you think that they're going to continue to go undefeated. So we've got the next couple of rounds for them, including the very important fixture today, which is Western United versus Western Sydney Wanderers.
And I love that the Wanderers are getting a look in on that poll already, because Teo, you reckon stylistically, this is actually a really tough matchup to call.
Yeah, in terms of Western Sydney Wanderers and how they will set up to counter Western United, I feel as though Western play down to their opponents every week. We were sitting here on the Dub Zone couch last weekend wondering if they were going to score and beat Wellington. Here they are a week later, they've beaten Sydney and people are saying they're going to go unbeaten the whole season. I think that next loss is a lot closer than people might actually think.
Big call as well there, Teo. Look, I think the turnaround for Western United, just 3.5 days ago really, that they had their last game. Great performance nonetheless, but that's asking a lot of players to turn around, to back up, to be fresh, to go again. So I think Western Sydney Wanderers might get the job done today.
Love it. Make sure you use that hashtag DubZone. Engage in the poll. Let us know. Do you agree with Gigi and Teo? Is today the day that Western United's unbeaten run ends? As we have a look at our Match Week 10 fixtures, Teo, 2 games kicking off this afternoon and the big Melbourne derby, for heat reasons, moved to tomorrow, Arvo.
It has. So we've got Wanderers Football Park and McKellar Park about to host our Dub Zone games today. Brisbane Roar are back from bye week. They play out of form Adelaide tomorrow. The derby, as you mentioned, and then for the first time ever, the distance derby in the Liberty A-League. Wellington Phoenix making the long trip all the way over to Perth.
Which brings us to the ladder and where it stands at this point, because there's some interesting games this weekend, starting the Savo for Canberra United, that could really see things start to condense in the middle of the table.
Yeah, it's really a huge difference to where we were 2 to 3 weeks ago, where there was a 5-point gap between 5th and 6th. Now we could have a real log jam for 4th spot on the table. All of this weekend's games are vital to it as well, and we're starting to see real signs of life and revival from the bottom 4 teams on the table, which in a longer season, don't forget, 9 games is the halfway point. No one's even reached it yet. There's so much time to go.
These two teams played midweek. Western United up against Sydney FC. Sydney, of course, had scored 8 goals in 2 games. This was a massive test for Western, Teo, and one that they proved they were up to.
Yeah, they passed it, didn't they, Grace? I suppose Sydney FC, we spoke about some of their injured players wearing bandages through the game. They looked so out of sorts. And Western United, they had some touches of class and real moments of composure, which proved the difference between the two teams.
I think they were just opportunistic as well, where those moments they did get into their final third, they found a way to score, and they were just probably a little bit more aggressive, willing to win their 1v1 battles, and that got them over the line.
Adelaide played City midweek as well, Teo. We were talking about Adelaide's hopes here on the couch last weekend. They've now lost 3 on the trot, and I'm not sure where their next goal comes from.
No, they haven't scored for 3 games. They haven't scored 2 in a game for 10 games now, stretching right back to last season. And Grace, in terms of attacking chances created, this was one of the worst non-Wellington performances for attacking output for the entire season. Melbourne City scored 2 late goals to really rub it in and make it 3-0. They got their rewards, but when you're playing against a team like Adelaide that just don't look like scoring, sometimes 1 is enough.
And I think from what we came to expect of Adelaide from last year, that's where that level of expectation now sits, that we expect more in the way of performances, goal scoring, the quality on the field, and we're just not getting it at the moment from Adelaide. City were really good nonetheless, but Adelaide are just really failing in that final third.
Can they change things this weekend? All right, Brianna Goodchild is at Wanderers Football Park. Last time we saw Brianna at a game, she roared the home team to victory. Will we see it in action today again? Brianna, what's happening out there at the Wanderers?
Hello, it's a beautiful day here out at Western Sydney. I'm here with a bunch of little legends. We have the Bears, the Rangers, Concord Juniors, and of course the Russell Lee Women's Clubs. Wait for the camera team. Now, are we excited to see some football today? Yeah! Do we think Wanderers can get a back-to-back win? Yeah! What do we do? Wanderers! Look, I think I am going to be the lucky charm, so we'll see how it goes. But look, hands in, we're going to do dub zone. Ready? 1, 2, 3, dub zone! Let the football. Oh, don't mind my hand. Plenty of football to come here today. Wave them off, guys.
Brianna, thank you so much. The hype woman that we all need in our lives. Will she be the lucky charm for the Western Sydney Wanderers today? And so we have a look at their lineup, Teo. An interesting one for the Wanderers in that Serena Bolden, who played her first game last weekend, had a massive impact for the side, off the field as well as on it, we've heard. And she remains in the starting side for the Wanderers this week.
She sure does. The Philippines international Wanderers, they would have loved to have rolled back the same 11 that got the job done, Grace, but they have a suspension for Sheridan Gallagher, yellow card accumulation. Sophie Harding straight back in. A couple of changes to the benches as well. Melissa Caceres out. Amy Chisari and Kush LaRue are the players that are added to the bench. For Western United, it is mass changes after the midweek game. Carly Johnson, Danielle Steer for her first start, Natasha Dakic for her first start, Julia Sato all come in. Jacqueline Savicki restored to the bench after about 6 weeks out battling a knee problem. Chloe Lagazzo's back on the bench, as is Angie Beard. And then the outs are huge. Amy Medwin, Alana Cern, Mel Taranto. So Western United, they are taking some liberties with their rotation, but so far it's working.
And I think they needed to as well, because I mentioned the turnaround in that time frame of the game, and I think Cern's a big out for them. I think she's been really unstoppable in the middle of the park. She's had such a great contribution, but in terms of freshness to the Western United side, they needed to make a few changes.
Do you think this is a time where we could really start to see Western United challenged in terms of how good their depth really is? Because we know that they've got a starting 11 that work, and they've got the likes of Lagazzo who can jump in and do some crazy stuff at the 60th minute, for example. But now they're really being tested with these kind of back-to-back games.
Yeah, and I think from today's lineup, we'll learn a little bit more about someone like Danielle Steele. What kind of quality does she bring? She's a relatively unknown to this league, so I'm curious to see how she goes. And as well, Angie Beard, what kind of form is she in? She's been overseas, comes back into our domestic league. Does she just slot back in really seamlessly, or does she take a few weeks to settle in? Because if it is the latter, it could be the point in which a team, whether it be Wanderers today or another team, looks to capitalise against the so far undefeated United.
And you wouldn't want to take this Western Sydney side too lightly, Teo. They showed Melbourne City last week that they can score goals. And I heard Amy Harrison speak during the week about the confidence that had brought the whole setup.
It's amazing that this really could have been so many more than 3. When in the second half, when Melbourne City were trying to find a way back in, Western City were hitting on the counter, chance after chance. It really should have been a more one-sided scoreline than it was, Grace. But I mean, Liv Price is a player we've been talking about all season, wanting to see more of her. It's because of moments like that, the quality that she possesses. And really, we're expecting today that she's the sort of player that should be able to control possession in midfield. Western are fairly shameless in their approach to football. It's hit it long, hit the channels, set pieces, tall players, lots of rough and tumble. Are Western Sydney going to enjoy the chance to maybe be the technical ball-dominant team today? Yeah,
look, I think it will be Western Sydney who has their foot on the ball, who we see at possession stats at halftime. I think it will be Western Sydney who are actually dominating the match in that regard. As for what they can then turn that into real chances and impactful chances, we'll see. But yeah, for me, Liv Price, she needs to be starting every week. The goal scoring aside, it's just that sort of assurance that she provides in the middle of the park. So really pleased to see her with another start this afternoon.
What will possession actually look like in this game, Teo? Will both teams almost be battling to avoid the ball, except when they want to counter and capitalise?
Look, I mean, the reason that Western United's game against Wellington was so ugly last week is because the onus was on them to go and create. So let's see if Western Sydney enjoy that opportunity today.
Let's have a look at Canberra United up against the Newcastle Jets and the changes in the lineup for this one, because there is a big out for Canberra. Grace Maher missing, injured, hopefully not for too long. That's a blow, isn't it?
Yeah, it's training session to training session for Maher at the moment. Canberra's hopeful to get her back by next week. They bring in their Chinese international Cheng Shu Wu, who's been out with a cheek fracture ever since the game against Brisbane Roar back in round 2. Newcastle, they bring back Georgie Worth in goal from illness. Tessa Tamplin returns for the first time since her hamstring injury. And back on the bench are Murphy Agnew and Sarah Griffith, the two Americans that have been battling respective back injuries. But Grace, Cheng Shu Wu here hasn't put on the Phantom of the Opera style face mask yet, so hopefully that means that facial injury has recovered. But it's big shoes to fill because Grace Maher has been in fantastic form.
She has, and she's the kind of player for Canberra that when Grace is on song, the rest of the team is too. So for Cheng Shu Wu to step back into the side, she's been at training, but for a number of weeks now, non-contact. She had that facial fracture that she got surgery on. So how, again, she'll settle back into the side. Can she play the kind of role that Grace Maher provides for this Canberra United midfield? Such a great provider of the ball. Of course, she can shoot. We saw that last week too with Grace's great finish. But Cheng Shu Wu is a different kind of player, and again, curious to see what kind of impact she can come having against Newcastle this afternoon, rather.
This is Canberra's clash with Adelaide last week, and we see Michelle Heyman, such a crucial player for this side as well. She's been looking for goals at the start of the season, Teo. She's starting to refine some form, and she'll be crucial, won't they, as they try to push up towards the top 4.
I mean, it's a real testament, Grace, to the leaders in this Canberra team that even with Kennedy Faulkner, their Canadian centre-back, out with a knee injury, even in the absence of Wu, you'd think these were two key pillars in a team that my pre-season belief was didn't have a great deal of depth. If anything, they're getting better. And what do you put that down to? Is their depth got tested and the performance has actually improved?
Yeah, look, I think a key part to that has been Ellie Brush coming back into the side from 2 ACL reconstructions, working her way back into match fitness, full games, match minutes. She's such a leader, and she spent a lot of time at Sydney FC as well, worked with a lot of the young girls there. But to be back into this Canberra United side, leading the line from the back as she does, she's a great defender, sort of no fuss defending, gets stuck in. And I think she's been a point of difference in where Canberra has started to find a little bit more continuity going forward.
Canberra have produced oh so many Matildas over the years. We saw the Cup of Nations announcement this week. The February international window is bearing down upon us, so it is time for World Cup Watch here on Dubzone. We'd love your input at home as well. Don't forget to use that hashtag Dubzone. Let's start with Courtney Vine and her numbers so far this season. Teo, she wants to be and has those 3 caps there or thereabouts in every Matildas discussion. She hasn't been dominating the Liberty A-League yet this season in the way that I think she would want to be.
No, and it's been surprising in that respect because Courtney Vine did stay in Australia and played in the NPL during the winter, didn't rack up the goals or bully that competition either. And we've just come off this game against Western United where Amy Medwin, who's a bit of an underrated player, was actually a under-17 Matilda and has been kind of out of sight, out of mind in college. But she put Courtney Vine in her pocket, really. And if anything, you want your Matildas in top form, dominating and saying, I'm undroppable, you need to pick me. But we're not seeing that at the moment.
No, I think the expectation around Courtney Vine is that she's absolutely lighting this league up. And at the moment, she's falling short of that. Medwin did excellently against her last week. And for Courtney Vine, I think, look, she's a pretty level-headed kind of character. I think she'd be the first to put her hand up and say, yep, I'm not at the level that I would like to be or that I need to be. And certainly for her, she needs to be pushing into these next couple of months to get that call up for the Matildas.
We're going to have a look at that World Cup watch throughout the first half here on Dub Zone. Don't forget, Dub Zone's your interactive show. We'll keep you right across all the action now. 2 simultaneous games this afternoon. Teo will make sure you don't miss a moment. Watching his facials alone is enough to tell me when I need to say, Teo, who's scored? Where are we going? So you can join us for that throughout the afternoon. We promise we'll keep you across both games. Or if you want to take a deep dive into one of them in particular, if like Grace Gill, you're a massive Canberra United fan and you just want to be at McKellar Park, that's okay too. And 10 Play and Paramount Plus have a full call of both of those games. But for now, Teo, the action is underway at McKellar Park already. I missed a goal last week, 30 seconds in for Newcastle, so I'm going to throw to you straight away.
Yeah, and I wonder if Canberra will try to rush them from kickoff here, playing in their green. Newcastle in their away white kit for this one. And Grace, the level of expectation around Canberra, it's slowly starting to rise. And we've seen that Adelaide didn't respond to that pressure of expectation when they were 4 wins out of 5. They were challenging for the Premier's plate and they've gone on a losing streak. Canberra, though, I feel as though they had the freedom of not being on anyone's radar. Bit of a slow start to the season, maybe drawing games where they could have won. Now that they're making their move, they come into a game against Newcastle here. Newcastle conceding, almost 3 goals a game. And everyone says, well, hey, Canberra at home, they should win. But this is where they need to respond. This is a club, when you played for them, that was the expectation week in, week out. But they've only made finals once in the last 5 seasons, so it's a very different Canberra to the one in your playing days.
Look, I think we've got to remember about the team this year, is that in their games, they are creating so many chances every single week. And for the first few in particular, the frustration for Nagos Popovic was around the fact that they just weren't finishing them. And that's been a point of continuation for Canberra. If they can put a couple more of those chances away, they'll be flying and they'll be laughing about it because the quality is there to do it. Michelle Heyman, all-time leading goal scorer, she's got that quality. She can put those chances away. So for Nagos, it's about how they're better in those moments.
I want to shout out some tweets that are coming through nice and early on, which is amazing. A few of you out there watching and hashtagging Dubzone. Thank you for that. But Teo, one for you to kick us off nice and early. After getting scored by midfielder T, which is obviously Teresa Polias, who we had on last week, for not copying his revisionist history of Jada Wyman's 1920 Dub Grand Final Player of the Match performance, then called out for his Melbourne bias by Neve Owens. How will Teo survive this week?
I mean, there are some accounts to go to for just the worst takes on every issue, and that's one of them.
I love it though, Teo. Do you get concerned? Because we do like to take the mick at every opportunity. How do you feel as the only bloke here on the Dub Zone couch? Are we too hard on you?
No, and I think Warren Moon, in a Brisbane Raw press conference recently, he said NPL Victoria is the centre of the universe.
Here we go.
And so I'm not going to disagree with the guy who's coaching the Brisbane Raw.
Neva,
thank you so much for confirming the Melbourne bias. Beautifully done, as articulated
I'm
by
I'm steering into the slide on that one.
Although, can I say, Nevo, if I'm a massive Canberra fan from being a former player, then surely this is the GG Nevo derby because this is your Newcastle team who you're a massive fan of, are you not?
Oh, mate, I've got the blue pants on. I've got my Liberty A-League Newcastle Jets pass right here. Happy to absolutely own it and really, really hoping for a stronger defensive performance from the Jets than we saw last week, for example.
Totally fair enough as well.
What else you got for us, Kat?
There's also comments here about our World Cup watch, so we'll throw some of those out. Get your thoughts. There's comments about Angie here, just in general, being happy to see her. Terrific player, lots of quality. But then in terms of this Matilda's watch, there's a comment here about, excuse me while I find it, Ayres for Matildas. So Ayres has obviously had an unbelievable season and unfortunately hit with some injury. So is she on your World Cup watch?
Yeah, look, Ez is always an interesting one for me. She's not top of the list of my World Cup watch, and that's nothing to take away from her performances. I think it's really disappointing to see she's picked up this niggle again. We know she's had troubles with hamstrings for a while, and that's what put her out for the majority of last season. Again, this season, she came in, she started the first game or two a little bit slowly, and now she's been flying. So I'm really disappointed that she hasn't been given a full season of, fit, fully healthy Melina Ayres, because I think that would then be the real measure of how good a player she is. I haven't seen a full season Melina Ayres flying in the way that I think she has capacity to do so.
Teo, what about you? Is Melina Ayres someone who's been on your radar? Because You do know everything there is to know about women's football in Australia.
Oh, don't be too nice to him now.
You know, one of us have to be nice here. No.
Okay, no. So unfortunately, I think the injuries are just too much of a setback.
Yeah.
I mean, the February window was like a long shot at best of getting into the conversation for a World Cup squad. And if you're injured and out of that window, then I think it's got to be a long-term view now. It's got to be consistent performances over a long period of time. Melina Ez's numbers would say she is a consistent performer over a long period of time. But if we're putting the ticking clock of Matilda's selection in the short term on it, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen. You know what? She may well come back and do exactly what she did last season and help Victory win the championship. But I don't think that is going to result in getting back onto the national team radar.
Look, her numbers are especially impressive given the fact that she's not been playing full season. She's been getting these injuries and not been picking up as many games as other players in the league are as well. The fact that she's still producing the numbers that she does is pretty bloody good. But it's really sad to see her go out with injury and the same week Riley Baisden, who the two of them top leading goal scorers for the league at the time, both out for, obviously Baisden for a long period of time now. That's a real shame because they're two players that were flying the flag for their respective teams. And look, I would have loved to see a full season from the both of them.
It is still 0-0, 6 or so minutes into this Canberra-Newcastle game at McKellar Park. Let's head back to Wanderers Football Park now as well, where we've got the Western Sydney Wanderers taking on Western United, and this one, early doors. Teo, 5 minutes in, but yet to see a goal.
And in the opening exchanges of the win against Melbourne City last week, Western Sydney Wanderers were very shaky playing the ball out from the back. They nearly got caught in possession inside their own penalty area, nearly gifted Melbourne City the chance to take the lead, and that would have drastically altered the game state and also the way the match would have played out as a result. So Western Sydney Wanderers need to remain composed playing the ball out from the back in these early stages and not do anything shaky to give Western United the chance to take the lead. Just from a pure talking about these teams' point of view, because Western United don't have a nickname, and because calling them United seems to sound particularly generic, it's always a difficult clash, this one, from just a how you talk about it point of view. Because if you say Wanderers versus Western, that still leads to some level of confusion as to who you are talking about. So Western need a mascot. They need something that we can also refer to them as, the green and blacks doesn't roll off the tongue, does it really? So,
particularly not when they're wearing
their away kit.
I mean, this sounds like a poll maybe, Kat, a crowdsourcing nickname for Western United.
Who should be the mascot? What should the mascot be for Western United?
And I don't think it could apply specifically to the A-League women's team as well. I mean, at the moment, they're the real flag bearer if you're looking for a reason to come and support this club. If you're looking for a reason to get involved in following the Liberty A-League, they're the draw card right now because they're on a winning streak and everyone loves a winner. So you don't even have to factor the context of the A-League men's team into the discussion when, looking to nickname this team, as we see a couple of early chances through the right cleared away.
Right, well, hashtag Dubzone, what you would like to see as the mascot for the Western United women. We'll worry about the men later. Let's get the women a mascot first.
And how do you want us to refer to it this afternoon without confusing you? Is it the Wanderers against Western? Hashtag Dubzone. Let us know. I love this tweet as well, Teo, because this is something you identified in the pre-game, that Kat Smith and Mark Torcaso do have history in NPL Victoria. Their sides have played against each other in the past. And as two coaches, they're very aware of how the other goes about their business.
Yeah, lots of history. Like, we're talking head-to-heads right back to the mid-2010s. So Kat Smith has not beaten Mark Torcaso head-to-head in a match, I think, for 9 games in a row now, stretching back to 2018. And ironically, the match-winning goal scorer the last time Kat Smith beat Mark Torcaso was Adriana Taranto, who now plays in this Western United team. So, a lot of history between the two, but certainly Calder United, the dominant team in Victoria. Kat Smith's Alamein, not a top team in recent seasons, but Kat's got the opportunity to show us what she can do at this level, and her involvement with the under-17 Australian team, the Junior Matildas, was also a factor. It wasn't purely being identified off the back of club football to get into the coaching pathway and get this shot at another level. But I don't know. It's a totally different group of players that they're working with here. There is Kat Smith right on cue. So I wonder how much of that history counts when they do know how the other likes to coach, because the Western United team we're seeing, they have been built for a very specific purpose.
But how long ago did you say that result was between Kat Smith and Mark Tocaso?
It was July 2018, I think.
2018. So if we're taking, players back from 2018 have actually been playing together since then and predating that as well, then yeah, we keep talking about this for Western United, but it should be no surprise that they are getting the kind of results they are because they've got the familiarity with their players alongside. And yeah, the Toronto Twins, obviously, they've been key to that.
We've got a suggestion from Twitter about what we could call Western, and it's from Sasha Pisani, who says, just call Western the Aussie Sassuolo.
I don't know if it rolls off the tongue particularly quickly, though. I mean,
It does when Kat says it.
it does when Kat says it.
Less
Yeah.
so when we do.
Teams that play in green and black, of course, there aren't too many of them around the world. Well, I mean, it's also, in terms of knowing your opponent, Grace, both the Toronto Twins played for Cat Smith. So, one of them's out. Mel Taranto is out today, but Adriana is still there. And I guess it's that level of familiarity of being able to coach your players and being able to tell them about the characteristics. But how much of that did you actually encounter in your career? Because it feels as though we in the media will see someone cut onto their right and score a goal. And there was a Premier League goal this week where Azpilicueta was marking Willian. Two former teammates that played with each other at Chelsea for 7 years, right? And the criticism of Azpilicueta was he fell for Willian's trademark move. I mean, do you, in your career, have experiences where coaches actually showed you footage or told you about a player, or was that entirely up to your knowledge of your opponent to know what they're going to do in certain situations?
Yeah, look, I think it's both, as in the coaches would identify things about the team, stylistically, how they play, and then also individual players and threats and look to say, well, how does this player do this well in this situation? Then we talk about that as a collective. But also as an individual, it's a really interesting question. And for me, there's two parts of that because you can watch as a football fan and you can see that Michelle Heyman is a great goal scorer on her right foot and she's a good aerial threat. But to then know what makes Michelle Heyman tick, whether that's mentally or psychologically, and players all across the league, you start to get to know how players are affected in that part of the game as well. So you might know if a player is this is a generic term, but a confidence player. You know if a player drops their head that on their next battle, you've got them simply for the fact that they're that kind of confidence player. So there's not just the physical attributes of good quality footballers, but also the emotional side of the game that I think, as individuals, you really, really get to know across the league.
Was there one who you had a particular sort of trouble with because they were unexpected or because they were creative, or was there someone who you could read like a book and if you were ever marking them, you knew exactly what they were going to do?
Putty in your hand.
No, this is, oh yeah.
Did you have a bunny is what I'm saying.
This is about knowing not only the opponent but yourself. So I knew in myself that if I, for whatever reason, came up against Elisa Devanna, which I did at times, I couldn't mark her too tight because she is so quick and I am nowhere near as fast as her, that you had to afford yourself a little bit more space and not get too close.
Speaking of fast, we're about to see a fast start for the Wanderers.
Wow.
And it's a first Liberty A-League goal for the Filipino star, Serena Bolden. Sophie Harding, restored to the starting 11, lays off the assist. And the belief of this Wanderers team, they are coming from a winless first 6 games of the season. But look how different they are now, breaking through the left side. And Bolden just too quick for that Western United defence. Big celebration. They will be loving it at the Wanderers Football Park. And Harding with the good vision there, but really, Bolden just burnt off the Western United defence.
Well, that's some really good reward for hard work there. And Sophie Harding, that's a nice ball, a nice square ball across the face of the goal. Serena Bolden, what a signing she has been. You could see the speed that she had in against Western United's defenders, left them for broke there. That's a really neat finish from the Wanderers.
Well, that throws down the gauntlet because
honestly,
I
that is throwing such a spanner in the works because you two did say it, and we talked off air before the show that you two were always in agreement that Western Sydney could take this one out. Neve and I stuck by Mark Del Caso, and I still stand by
Early
it.
doors.
Early days. And we did have a comment from Taryn Hedo saying that this has been a little less hectic than the first 10 minutes of last week, which I totally agree with. Because if you missed it, I think there was something like
4 goals in the first 10 minutes,
yeah, 4 goals in the first 10 minutes, which was a lot for someone like Teo who's trying to call it and join in the conversation. But we have a question from Taryn saying, what's your favourite kit so far for the season? Is it can be an away kit, a home kit, a training kit?
That's a really good question. Taryn did mention Canberra's training and warm-up kit.
Oh, what a surprise. Gigi's going
I'll
Canberra.
highlight it because their warm-up kit is a beautifully designed, purpose-built Indigenous designer, a First Nations artist in Canberra, designed that for the girls. So I think it's a very unique kit.
We don't have, there's a mannequin behind you there wearing Western United, and on the kit rack we don't have a Canberra home, away, or anything. So Canberra, if you're watching, they need to post the kit through so we can put it on the mannequin
I'll let them
here
know,
on the Dub
because
Zone
their
set.
away kit as well is really, really flash. It's a nice white with a few highlights of green, but it's a very clean kit, Nevo.
Needs to be rectified. I quite like the Western Sydney kit that we're seeing today. It's a good traditional football kit, distinctive. You always know the Wanderers are playing. And when you see it around the streets, which you so often do in Sydney, there's never any doubt about who that football team is and who they're supporting, which I quite like that.
I like that too. I agree. It's my favorite colour is red, but I do like that Western United kit. There's something really nice about that green, and it's my Strathfield colours, so got to support the Canterbury district, guys.
I'm also a sucker for the Adelaide United away kit. So this year the sort of bone colour, but last year as well their coral away kit was beautiful.
Spot on. I think we need more kits here in our kit rack. This is what this has demonstrated. Taryn, a great question.
We've had a few incredible comments on Twitter about Bolden, saying Bolden the Beautiful. I think that's the new thing, isn't it? We're going to make that trend. Bolden the Beautiful. What a goal.
Amy Harrison spoke during the week, Teo, about the difference that Serena Bolden had made on the field, during their games and during that win over Melbourne City, but also in the training environment and the thirst that she brings, but also the expectation of performance that she has brought, which I thought was such an interesting comment so early in her tenure there at the Wanderers. She's clearly bringing a vibe.
Yeah, and it's a real credit to, she was playing club football in Japan, but it's a real credit to the training camps that the Philippines national team have been running in Australia at Wanderers Football Park, no less, that someone could arrive and in their first game immediately be so sharp, run out the 90 with such energy, no need for a settling in period. Probably also good coaching, because Wanderers could have rushed Bolden, taken her over to New Zealand to play against Wellington Phoenix. They're probably wishing they did, because they might have 2 extra points on the table right now had they done so. But it's a real testament to both Bolden's preparation, but also Wanderers making sure they put her into a situation to succeed.
It is, and you can see the impact she's making already for this Wanderers side, and that's exactly what we've been speaking about the Wanderers have needed in these opening rounds.
We do have a goal at McKellar Park. I'm hesitant to go to this one for very obvious reasons, Teo. Call it for us.
All right, so Canberra going backwards here. I hope this isn't a passing out from the back howler. Newcastle not pressing too aggressively, and looks as though they're going to stand off here and let Canberra hit a long ball up the right flank, tucked inside here. Michelle Heyman on the move, sending it over to Nikki Flannery on the left. We know Flannery's good from distance, just chips it into the box instead, though. A clever pass, and Michelle Heyman, the all-time leading scorer in the Liberty A-League, adds another one to the tally. And the Newcastle defence, they were picked apart a little bit there. Flannery thought about a long shot, but instead Heyman's run, getting goal side of Taryn King, and given those two are former teammates, well, you got to say that Heyman was able to outfox a defender that knows her very, very well. But that is A-League Women's goal number 86. We were talking about whether Michelle Heyman could score 100 this season. She would have had to go at a goal a game for 18 games. But there's an early goal here, and Canberra United are in the ascendancy.
Well, when Michelle Heyman gets in goal-scoring form, it's a pretty dangerous sight. So for Canberra, obviously a really positive start there. I love for Michelle how she's actually initiated that play and then got on the end of the resulting ball as well from Flannery. It's a neat finish. There were a couple of questions there of had she floated into an offside position, but nonetheless, that's a really great start for Canberra.
And we were talking about those individual matchups and players, how you approach them and knowing their characteristics. I tell you what, Heyman would be absolutely thrilled with the way she was able to just slip away from Taryn King and make the defence disappear. With her movement into the box is as important as the finish for that actual goal.
Yeah, and Michelle's got really intelligent runs off her opponent, off the shoulder of her defender. She's completely lost Taryn King in that run. I think Taryn would want to have that one over to be a little bit closer, and for a player like Michelle, you just can't give her that amount of time and space on the ball, and it was a really well taken finish.
That's the 23rd goal that Newcastle have conceded this season. Yes, I felt all 23 of them. But Gigi, it felt like from a Canberra perspective there was a calmness and a confidence but they didn't have to pull the trigger early, that they had time and space in the box that they could use.
Even the build-up of play that we saw, starting at the back with Ellie Brush going back to Chloe Lincoln in goal. Obviously, Newcastle aren't wanting to press really high on Canberra and put them under that amount of high press, but it did mean that Canberra could then play through fairly comfortably. And you're right, Nevo, that finish from Flannery to Heyman was taken really well, really composed, and didn't look to panic on the opportunity at all. And this is the chances we're talking about with Canberra, but if they can start capitalising on a few of them, then they're just going to be a really formidable team.
Georgie Worth back in goal again today for the Jets. We've seen her and Claire Quayle in and out of this Jets lineup so many times this season due to COVID, due to injuries, a range of reasons. But how difficult does that make it for the defensive unit to actually get in some kind of pattern and belief and confidence in each other?
I think it's really tough, and you've mentioned a few reasons behind why some of those changes have been made due to either injury or illness or a few different ones there, but also obviously performance. And I think that's really tough, not only on a goalkeeper, on their mentality, but am I playing this week? Am I not the next week? If I let in a goal, will I play? Won't I play? It's one thing to have that as a starting goalkeeper, but when every single week you don't know if you're actually going to be playing or not. Also, really importantly, is how that connection works with the backline. So in any team, as any position, you get used to the people around you and you start to build some continuity. But if every week you've got a different communicator behind you telling you where to go, when to go, how to be organised, look, I think it's a really tough thing for the Newcastle girls, and really tough, I feel, for both Georgie Worth and Claire Quayle in that as well.
Because that's such an important part of the role, isn't it, Teo? We see Lydia Williams do it for the Matildas so often. She is the director from the back. She is talking the entire game. And for both Georgie and Claire, they'd have different ways of going about that, and indeed wouldn't be feeling, I imagine, as confident themselves because they're in and out of the lineup.
Especially in a situation where Newcastle, player for player, you need the whole to be greater than the sum of its parts. I mean, Tegan Allen is a former Matilda, but hasn't, I don't think, been on the national team radar since 2016. So has even played just NPL during the winter, is no longer effectively a full-time professional player, or has 40 caps, but most of them were won as a teenager and a player in her early 20s. Taryn King has been a long-time player in this league, but has never really looked like, obviously her brother's in the Socceroos, Joel, but Taryn herself has not really ever been on the Matildas' radar or someone whose performances were commanding selection. So it's a defence that has to be marshalled. It's a defence that has to be led. And you change your keeper every game, you lose that continuity and that opportunity for the whole to be greater than the sum of its parts.
It's a real testament to how getting consistent game time is so beneficial to how you play. And I think you see this across every league around the world, that game time is so crucial. And that's why you see players make certain decisions to jump from one club to another, because they're chasing that game time. And on top of that, that goalkeeper position is just so intrinsically connected to the team's performance. And we saw it in the World Cup, and we'll see it in the Women's World Cup as well, that you tend to fall on your keeper in those most dire moments. And when you don't know which keeper's going to be playing, it changes a lot about the game, doesn't it?
It does, certainly. And I think to the point about continuity in the sides, you see going overseas, Serena Wiegman for the England women's national team went an unchanged starting lineup in the Euros, or was it not only the whole group stages but into the finals, and they went on to win. And not to say that that's going to happen in every league in every world, but it definitely plays in their favour and did for them too.
The other thing that frustrates me with Newcastle is, sure, you can bring in an import keeper. We've seen that with Hilary Beale and Hensley Handcuff at Brisbane Roar. Newcastle have done it expertly in the past with Britt Eckerstrom, who was a real top keeper, the American, when she came out here to play for Newcastle. If you're going to go with an Australian keeper, you've got to go with someone who's got the upside to push for national team selection. It feels as though, Claire Quayle has had a long career, both as a number one and a number two. Georgie Worth is trying to establish herself as a number one, but I don't think either of them are realistically in the top 10 or even 15 choices for the Australian goalkeeper jersey. If you're going to go for an Australian, identify someone that, if you're going to take the pain of performances that are suboptimal, at least it's someone who's learning from the experience and building towards getting into the national team at some point in the future.
Well, it's an intriguing one with Morgan Aquino and Sarah Langman over in Perth, and how that dynamic there, they are pushing each other for that starting spot. And we have seen Aquino on a couple of occasions start. For the most part, it's been Langman, but we know Langman spent time at Western Sydney Wanderers as well, where she was starting every single week. So there's obviously motivation behind decisions and why keepers do these things. But I agree with you, Tay. You've got to be finding match minutes and looking for that continuity, pushing each other into those roles.
Which brings us back to World Cup watch, and we'll do that in just a moment's time. But first, let's head back to Wanderers Football Park. Brianna Goodchild is there, and I imagine amongst some pretty happy fans with the home side start to this game.
Hello, can you hear me there?
We sure
we
can,
are here with some big. We're here with some big Wanderers fans. We've got Dad, Marty, Alex, Katie, and Misha. And how are we feeling about the game today? Great! And why is that? Why are we happy? We're winning! That's right. And we haven't even had a second to breathe, really. It's just down our end of the pitch so often. There was a close miss, wasn't there, just before? That's it, too close misses. Now, Alex, you watched last week's game. What did you make of that one?
It was incredible.
And do you think we can back it up here again today?
Sure.
Definitely. Now, who's your favourite player? And your favourite player? And she just scored, didn't she? Okay, so look, the fans are going nuts. We're very excited. It's very full here. You can sort of see the stadium is packed out. So look, we'll send it back to studio and keep you posted for more goals, yeah? Yeah. All right. So, lead us in a cheer.
Who do we sing for?
Very fitting in like an absolute local there at Wanderers Football Park. And Teo, great to see the crowd back. Football is doing well when the Wanderers are doing well. And the men's or the women's league in Australia, they get the crowds along. They're passionate, and we're seeing that at Wanderers Football Park as we have a look back at some of the highlights from the first half. Yeah,
it's a perfect size venue as well, the Wanderers Football Park, to fill up and get a crowd in and make it feel like a good atmosphere. And when that ball hit the back of the net, the cheer would have been immense. Now, here's an earlier chance. Sophie Harding, not the best one-on-one finisher in this league, and is able to draw a save out of Hilary Beale. But Grace, this is not an uncommon sight, both when she was wearing the colours of Newcastle and also now Western Sydney Wanderers. Great assist for the goal, but probably should have scored herself.
For sure, on that first one, that needed to be a finish. Second assist, excellent. That first one, though, Sophie Harding's really quick. She's really strong. She's really powerful. I think she almost could have taken another touch, gotten herself a little bit closer, and just peeked aside to pass into the back of the net.
And we saw the chance there for Serena Bolden, blocked away by some desperate Western United defending. They're under siege at the moment, and it's a totally unfamiliar feeling for them. I mean, they've won 7 games from 7. You wouldn't have known it based on the first 25 minutes of this match. They're being dominated out there.
That was always going to be the question about this game, about how both teams came out, who was going to assert dominance in the way of holding on to possession. We're starting to see that play out a little bit.
Right on cue, they equalise. They just find a way. Hannah Keane, that puts her into the lead in the Golden Boot race after scoring a double against Sydney FC midweek. Hannah Keane with really the first shot on target for Western United. Here's the cross into the box. Keane was there for the header. And I said, strength, height, power. Keane's got it all. And it's a Sydney girl, Carly Johnson, back in her hometown, laying off a quality assist there, just taking on Danica Matos one-on-one, looping in a teasing ball, and Hannah Keane got up and did the rest. And there was nothing the defender, Alexia Apostolakis, there could do about it. And really, that reminds me a lot of the goal she scored against the Wellington Phoenix too. The defender's right there next to her, but you just can't compete with the leap or the size.
No, you can't. She's got great timing on that finish there. I'm really pleased as well for Carly Johnson. She's a young player, young Matilda, who's had to bide her time about getting into these starting spots in Western United. This afternoon, what a way to assist Hannah Keane, who is just in great form. The ball across as well was excellent. And Keane, really good timing, obviously really great aerial threat, and that's a nice finish.
We've seen some golden chances there for Wanderers. How much do they regret not taking a 2-0 lead now? Because they left the door ajar for Western to come in and punish them.
We were speaking just moments ago about that Sophie Harding chance, and you think, had she put that one away, they're the kind of things that start to creep back into your mind when you've missed those opportunities, those chances that could put your team in a very different position and now suddenly back on level playing terms.
Which is what Western United do so well. As we hear the goal sting go off once again, we know that it wasn't there at Wanderers Football Park, so let's head back to McKellar Park, Teo.
All right. Can the Jets get back into it here? Looking to roll into the attacking half, but it's a pass that is easily swept upon by Ellie Brush, who's still wearing the Impact headband as well on her return to the team this season. Here's Hayley Taylor-Young. She's been thrown in at left back in the last couple of weeks, and now Vesna Milivojevic, very creative player. Nikki Flannery on the wing as well. Canberra looking to press for a second here. Flannery cuts left, and it looks as though it's in. Yep. I'm just trying to work out if that's a goal or an own goal here. It was Flannery's cross that was difficult to deal with. Yeah, that's a goal. Oh, no, it's off the face of Cheng Shu Wu. And so after coming back from a cheek fracture, I'm hoping that there is actually a goal celebration attached to that, because Cheng Shu Wu has scored her first goal in the Liberty A-League, but has done so off the very injury that she suffered that's kept her out of the team. So Canberra's 2-0 up, but I hope Wu's okay.
Look, I think she is okay. I did see her celebrating and she looked to be in good form. So,
oh, and they've nearly got a third. Well, Newcastle, they need to just shut the gates and close all the windows here, because Vesna Milivojevic has nearly made it 3, and Nikki Flannery is ripping this game to pieces at the moment. They can't do anything about her.
That's a great run from Milivojevic, and much better as well there from Nikki Flannery, driving inside and just making the defenders from Newcastle make a decision. It's so hard when you've got a player running at you at speed, you've got a player checking off out wide, you've then got to make the call. Who's the most dangerous player in this situation? Nikki Flannery looks like she's really starting to become more and more comfortable, which is so important for her.
So a corner here for Canberra, trying to go 3-0 up. Newcastle, of course, were in a 3-0 hole before coming back against Sydney FC last week. They won't want to do it again, though. And the ball is blocked here at the near post. Newcastle just trying to resist at the moment. Canberra looking like they're going to score every time they go forward. 7 total shots, 3 on target. Their XG is already 1.82. Newcastle, by contrast, 2 shots off target, 0.04. So they're being dominated here, Grace. They have 60% possession to 40 as well. It is all going downhill for Canberra, and Newcastle just need a game changer here to put a foot on the ball and stop this from becoming a half-field game.
Really comfortable from Canberra at the moment, and you can see that the game's been played mostly in their attacking half, and Canberra pressing really high up front there, which is putting Newcastle under a lot of pressure in there at the moment, failing to deal with that comfortably.
The goal has definitely been credited to Wu, definitely got the last touch. It was really more the surprise of the fact that she wasn't expecting the ball to rear up and hit her in the face, and it's gone in.
That was always going to be the fear when you come back from an injury, let alone a face injury, and you've had surgery on a fracture there. Just that first contact, whether it's a ball, whether it's someone's stray arm, there'd be a few nervy moments around that.
There's always a confidence thing, isn't there? When you've had a specific injury and you return to the game, you're always thinking about that injury. So she did not expect to score a goal off her face today. I can guarantee that. But Teo, we have a question from Kate on Twitter who says, I'll play devil's advocate on the goalkeepers.
Teresa's not here. Teresa's not here this week.
Does it necessarily need to be the national team? Why not reaching out to one of our overseas leagues, particularly given education opportunities in some countries?
So are we talking about Australian goalkeepers going overseas, or are we talking about import goalkeepers coming to the A-League?
I think the question relates to import goalkeepers.
Look, we've seen Western and Brisbane Raw. They've assessed the market, they've assessed the landscape, and they've said, we're going to go for an import. And other teams have done that in the past, and I think it's been a smart move, because without Hilary Beale in goal for Western United, they're putting Alyssa Daloste, inexperienced NPL-level keeper, right in the deep end, trying to marshal that backline, Grace. It's a totally different team. Really, Hensley Handcuff, hand in hand with Katrina Gorry, has been Brisbane Raw's best player this season as well.
Yep, and the other way to interpret that question as well, look, I think, we're quick to sort of look at a performance and say, should they be in the Matildas? The question should also be, should they be picked up overseas? Because there are some really good competitive teams, leagues, where whether it be our goalkeepers or our on-field players, to get picked up by a European club is just an amazing prospect. Not only just the experience, the education around that, but also then what that does to a player's game and life experience. I think that's a fabulous opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It also ties in a lot with what we see in other positions and those moves overseas.
That's the decision that the likes of Sally James and Chloe Lincoln, they're going to be making in the next 3 years, I would suggest, because the Liberty A-League's getting longer. But if their level of performance, if the level of performance of a Chloe Lincoln genuinely is on a trajectory to make the national team, once she's, an adult and has actually finished school and got everything out of the way about being able to get into a position to focus on football and make a decision about how far do I want to take my career, that's where the overseas move starts to come into the equation. But not until, I think, you establish yourself as a top player in the Liberty A-League and have a show reel the equivalent or better of Jada Wyman, who herself has not made that decision to move just yet.
No, that's true. And I think, someone like Chloe Lincoln, to use your example, just turned 18, still finishing year 12. So, once she flies the coop and has that life experience to want to go overseas, I think there's definitely a question around that too.
It brings us back to World Cup watch. We were discussing in the pre-game as well. You've mentioned Jada Wyman there, Teo. She's out with a fractured finger at the moment. She won't feature in that February window. But Casey Dumont absolutely doing everything in her power to make sure that she gets the Tillies call up this time around. Will it happen?
Well, I just desperately hope the Matildas pick 3 goalkeepers that are actually fit to play. We saw with some of the international windows last year, they flew Alana Kennedy and Steph Catley back to Australia injured just to be part of the camp, to be in the environment. Now, you can disagree with that reasoning, and I do, but that's the reasons we were given, right? So I really wish that we would have 3 goalkeepers that can play in this February window. We've got 3 games, 6 halves of football. Is it Lydia Williams needing the minutes because she's currently back up at PSG? I wouldn't disagree with that. If we put all 3 games into Lydia Williams, I'd say that's great. We've made our decision on our number 1. And even if she's not going to play a lot of club football between now and the end of the season, we've given you the gloves. It's your position to take ownership of. So we just break here. Newcastle looking for a goal back. The one I wanted to ask about, Grace, is Tegan Micah, because Micah is now a lot of people's choice as Matilda's number 1. However, watching the Champions League, where she's played for Rosengard, they conceded 20 goals in 6 games. And Micah's own performances, yes, it's obviously she's a good player to be in the Champions League. That's obvious. But I don't think she played well once she got there. And I'm not sure the form necessarily means that if we're going to go with a bit of a bolder pick for, say, a Lydia Williams as our number 1, off no game time, that we wouldn't stick with Lids.
And this is a difficult question for the coaches to consider. Do you go with a keeper who is not playing much at all in the likes of Lydia Williams, frustratingly at PSG? Or do you go for a Tegan Micah who is playing really regularly but getting a lot of goals put past her? And look, I cast my mind back to the Matildas where at the 2020 Olympics, Tegan Micah was presumably the first choice keeper.
At that point,
she played in those games. And then come the Asian Cup earlier last year, Lydia Williams was back into what looked to be the number 1 position. Was that on performance? Was that on preference? We don't see what happens at training. But look, I think in terms of someone coming into that 3rd place position, whether it's a Casey who I think is arguably in the best form of our domestically based goalkeepers, or is it a question of the coaching staff management looking for the future of the game, sort of 5-10 years from now, and saying, okay, well, Casey is an excellent goalkeeper. She could slot in perfectly to that role, but let's look to a Sally James or a Chloe Lincoln for the future. I don't know the answer to that question.
No, I think you've got to pick the hot hand, though. For me, it's a no-brainer that Dumont's in, and I think at least just to be in that training environment so they can put it under the lens that they think is important. I do think the Matildas overrate performance in training camps and training within their environment as opposed to actual games. I mean, you don't get 3 points for a training session, but the Matildas clearly think you do. Because I do feel as though there's at times not a huge correlation between match performance and if you get called up for the national team. Dumont's match performance commands being selected, and then it's up to the Matildas to, go into the details and the explanation of, we put her in a training camp environment, we've measured her against our other national team keepers, we've seen her play against Sam Kerr in training and against our national team strikers, and if after giving her that look, they decide that they still want to go with Micah or Williams, fair enough, it's their decision.
Justified.
But I still think she needs to at least get through the door to be part of that camp.
Yeah, don't disagree with that. And look, I think of the times that Case has spoken about it, she's spoken about how happy she is in where she is in her life, with her work, with her personal life outside of football. And that's a great position for a person and a goalkeeper to be in. And if she's happy doing what she's doing and she doesn't have prospects to push on for the Matildas, then also that's a great thing too. She doesn't necessarily want to play for the Matildas, but I think she's in the form that would warrant a call-up and an opportunity in that squad.
Well, we would love to know what you think as well. I think this Casey Dumont, Jada Wyman conversation seems to come up very regularly with us, and we're always thinking, who is that next kind of goalkeeper for the Matildas? But on top of that, it's wanting to know what you guys think as well. So please hashtag Dubzone. Let us know your thoughts around this, because I know you've all got opinions.
We want to see
like
her.
to tell us, and we want to know.
I love that discussion about seeing her in the Matildas setup and the Matildas environment, because we often talk about the different leagues around the world and the different challenges that they present. We've mentioned Champions League football there for Tegan Micah. If she was the goalkeeper at Melbourne Victory, would she have conceded that many goals in the last quarter of the season. It's a question that's very difficult to answer, Teo, but if we can see the goalkeepers in that same training environment for the Matildas, both up against the likes of Sam Kerr, perhaps we get a better idea of where the different leagues are at and indeed where those players are at.
Yeah, for sure. And I think taking in point someone like Lydia Williams, who isn't playing games over at PSG, but arguably is in a really good training environment, training with some of the best goalkeepers in the world, facilities. And as a goalkeeper, you get your touches at training. You don't get hundreds of touches in a game. You do 100 touches in training so that the 5 touches you take in the game are good touches. So that training environment is all the more important for a goalkeeper.
Especially as she works her way back from injury as well. It hasn't been an easy run for Lids.
Let's not forget here, the increasing professionalism of women's football in Europe means Lydia Williams could be a second or a third goalkeeper for another 6 or 7 years. I mean, Mark Schwarzer played well into his 40s and was on the books of Leicester City and Chelsea, you know, as a third keeper or a backup keeper, probably earning as good, if not better money than when he was playing in the earlier parts of his career, because he was ending up at, you know, top-end Premier League teams and super clubs. What's to say that Lydia Williams won't be playing to a similar sort of age? Because think about all the sacrifices that she would have made at the start of her career, either playing for nothing or paying to play, or any money you do earn is immediately burnt on expenses or travel or living out of home, etc. And now she gets that opportunity into her 30s, in seemingly the twilight of her career, still to be a mentor to other goalkeepers, to be a backup goalkeeper, to potentially start developing as a coach, and also to be at one of the biggest and best clubs in the world. I mean, I still think her career is going to go for a very long time, even if it's not necessarily as the Matildas' number one. I think for this World Cup, probably still my number one choice.
I feel like this is a conversation that is just so permanent in the Australian game, which is whether we consider that local national experience playing in the Liberty A leagues versus having that overseas experience, and where that plays into your selection and whether or not players, I suppose, there's a bias towards having that overseas experience versus killing it in the local game.
And another point to that, Kat, is when you were just talking there, Teo, around an experienced goalkeeper, Melissa Barbieri, case in point, at Melbourne City, and has, through performance, started ahead of young prospect Sally James. So the very conversation we're just having applying to Lydia Williams in 10 years' time is exactly the situation playing out with Barbieri.
We just saw on the screen, Lockie Flanagan, fantasy captain Hannah Keane is on 62 points because it's a double game week for Western United. They played midweek, now they play at the weekend. Hannah Keane has scored 3 goals in that time. Just get the handshake emoji out, because I also have Hannah Keane as fantasy captain. It's not a Redheads thing. It's purely a football performance thing. But yes, Hannah Keane, fantasy captain. Thank you very much.
Well done, well done. We've got some great comments coming in from all over about all the different topics that we've been covering, which is fantastic to see. But Joe Chama did say, whoever is selected goalkeepers for the Matildas during the World Cup, I do hope Casey Dumont gets her chance. She really deserves it, in my opinion. And I think it is a testament to the season she's had. And there's so much hard work involved. And we saw so many, I suppose, representations of that hard work on social media. And there was Tegan Allen's post about that emotional experience of losing a game. Let's just be realistic. For all that we talk scores and clean sheets and this and that, there's also the emotion behind losing a game. And it's the element that we can sometimes forget to talk about in football, and it's the resilience that it takes to bounce back the way that the Jets did last week. And though they didn't win, to be able to come back from 3 goals down very early on is very impressive, and it's something that it's huge, really, to have been able to do that. But I guess, Grace, I'm curious, with your experience playing at that level, I'm sure there were moments where you'd experienced a few back-to-back losses, and it's how you go into that next game and what you're telling yourself to just make the next game feel a little different.
Yeah, look, it's really tough as a player. I think, you're so right, Kat. We can easily sit here and we can talk about results, who scored, stats, starting lineup, but there's so much behind that in the way of selection, the anxiety and lead up to who's playing, who's starting, who's on the bench, who's in the stands. And that emotional roller coaster that every single one of these teams and these players go through every week, and that's tough before the game's been even played. Then the game's played, there's the results. Your team either wins or loses, but individually you either have a good or a bad performance in that. So you take so much and you hold so much of that on your shoulders when the game finishes, let alone if you have had a loss, have made a really bad mistake. You carry that throughout the week until the next cycle begins in the way of, okay, training, get back onto it, game week, how do I pick myself back up again? So you're right, Kat, and it is something we do need to be really mindful of because there are people behind all of these performances and all of these stats, and it's really tough.
Exactly. And talking about Matilda's selections and World Cup watch, and they're all eagerly watching too, I'm sure, which is part of the fun, but it's also that anticipation that they show up every day and play, and they're probably not sure what that next step is as well.
The psychological battle, and that continues for the Jets and Tegan Allen, as you mentioned there a moment ago, Kat, today, because they've conceded early goals. As we check the scores around the grounds in our simultaneous games, the Savo, it is 1-1 between Western Sydney Wanderers and Western United, and the Jets down 2-0 at McKellar Park. Canberra United, the home side, well and truly with the early running in that game. Some of the tweets coming in, Teo, talking about the change to the Wanderers. They beat City last week, and according to one of the tweets we received this afternoon, absolutely dominating Western in terms of transitional play today.
They were, and possession at the moment is actually Western 53, Wanderers 47. So, again, we suggested that neither team necessarily wants the ball to play their optimal game plan of hitting on the counter-attack, but they're sharing the ball at the moment. Final third entries are almost dead level, 27 to 29, touches in the opponent's penalty area, 10 to 8. So they've had as many chances as each other, but in terms of the actual execution, Western Sydney Wanderers 6 shots, 3 on target. We've seen how desperate Western United were. There we go, the Western thing again. We've seen how desperate the Australian Sassuolo were in clearing the ball out of that defensive penalty area, and the quality of chances that Wanderers were able to create. Western United, by contrast, 4 total shots, 1 on target, which has been the goal. But we see them going forward here through Julia Sardo clipping the ball to the back post, and that's where Hannah Keane was previously. Now the follow-up shot is on, and it hits the woodwork. That was Danielle Steer, the Canadian, trying to announce herself to the A-League Women's. Of course, a dual passport holder, but very much a born and raised Canadian that's come over from the University of British Columbia, was a prolific goal scorer with them, Grace, and we just got to look at what she's capable of.
Well, wouldn't that have been an entry? She did come off the bench in the last fixture for Western United, but she got onto that really nicely, picked that up cleanly. That's frustrating for her that's just nicked the outside post there.
That would have been Western in front at half-time. We're in the last 30 seconds here. TJ Vlanic with a long throw that's dangerously flicked through Wanderers' own penalty area, but they're able to get it away. And as we know, in the second half, Chloe Lagazzo, Angie Beard, and even Jacqueline Savicki, who I keep getting told is actually the best player in this Western team. It's just she has a troubling knee injury, having essentially played for the Canadian national team, retired or, taken a sabbatical from football, and is really having issues getting back up to the speed of playing at a serious professional level again. But it's someone who was good enough to play for Canada when she was at her best. So watch out for those three in the second half as we see Julia Sardo nearly score her first A-League women's goal there. And so Western United are finishing the half much the stronger.
When you look at the bench, you've just mentioned a couple of players there, but 2 Matildas, one current, one in Angie Beard, potential current former TBC, we'll come back to that, and a Canadian former national team player as well. And then you refer that to Western Sydney Wanderers bench, a much younger bench, much less experience. And when Chloe Lagazzo has come on for Western United, we've seen the impact she's made. And look, I'm sure at some point this afternoon she'll feature. They're handling her load really, really carefully at Western United, and I think that's important. But that's quite a daunting prospect when you've got that kind of quality sitting, waiting to come on the bench.
And it's not just because Kat and I backed them in the pre-game in terms of Western United, but their games so far this season, Teo, they've caused their fans a few extra grey hairs at times, but they have always come home and they've had a trust and a confidence that they'll find that extra goal when they need it, and they have done in 7 from 7 so far.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say there's a profound fitness difference between them and any other team in the league. I mean, to be honest, they look fairly regulation in terms of the actual aerobic, capacity of their midfield and their defence. The forwards is a different story. Keane, McDonald, super athletes, fitness freaks. But I don't think that's the sole reason they're overrunning teams. I think it's mental. I do think there's an element of, Helen Winterburn, Mark Torcaso's assistant, is the tactical sharpness, and then Mark Torcaso is the real emotional motivation. He's the one that knows how to hit the right note for the team. And then you've got natural leaders like a Jess McDonald and Chloe Lagazzo in the team. But I can tell you, this is McDonald's second to last game of her 9-game guest stint. She'll be missed. They targeted Jess McDonald to help set the culture of a startup club. and they weren't expecting to win as many as they did. But even if they were losing, what McDonald has brought from a standards and a cultural point of view has been priceless behind the scenes. And so when that leaves the building, she's got to go back to her family in the United States. They're not here with her. I just wonder, will the lessons she's left be able to have permeated through the group? And then other leaders like an Alana Cern, at the opposite end of the experience scale in terms of the age of her career, is going to be able to sort of learn those lessons and carry them on as a bit of a legacy of what McDonald has left for the club.
She's a pretty tough one to replace. And even if she does leave a legacy of lessons and what she could impart in her knowledge as a gold medal Olympian with the US women's national team, as an individual, she's pretty tough to replace. So interesting to see. Oh, it's a heavy knock there.
Look at that defending. That was Danica Mato, Lauren Keir, who's been wiped out by Jess McDonald, and a head clash means that they're going to stop play here. And so that was a centre-back down in the attacking penalty area against a centre-forward back defending, all hands on deck. And Lauren Keir, from a family of rugby league players, both dad and brother have played in the NRL, and that...
She just threw
Well,
her
that was a
body-
shoulder charge, wasn't it?
Thankfully, that doesn't appear that she's just winded. It doesn't appear to have actually been a clash of heads. So that's a relief there for Keir, who's able to get back up. And if there was one player who could absorb that sort of a hit, it is absolutely Lauren Keir.
We had a full room reaction to that one. Did you hear?
Yeah, we did.
Everyone was
I felt like we had a studio audience.
Yeah, we did.
For a
It
moment.
felt like it.
Yeah.
Shh, don't give away the future of the...
Hashtag Dubzone if you'd like to be in the studio audience. Let us know for future Saturdays. It is 1-1 as we approach half-time at Wanderers Football Park. It is half-time at McKellar Park, and Canberra United go into the half-time break with a 2-0 lead. And it feels like, Teo, at home, the Wanderers, who have dominated much of this half, are actually ready for the break to be called now.
Yeah, they probably would, because Western United are finishing this half strong. We see their long ball, looking for the runners, trying to get in behind this Wanderers team. But they've given as good as they've got. 14 total shots in this game between the two teams. They're both committed to attacking here. I really think, other than last week where we got to the 79th minute, Western United aren't the sort of team that are going to play too many 0-0 draws throughout the course of their existence. It feels as though they could score or concede at any given moment. And you think back to the game that they won 3-2 in Perth, coming from behind on 2 occasions. They're the sort of team that no game state seems to be beyond them at this point, never mind an early 1-0 deficit here against Wanderers.
Look, I think that just speaks to their mentality, the resilience they've got in the kind of players in that side. It's just they feel like they can't ever be sort of beaten in those moments, which is great. It makes for a really enjoyable watch, but also to be part of something like that is really special when you feel like no matter what the situation, you can recover from it.
Looks like it's a pretty windy day out at Wanderers Football Park as well. Thankfully not the hottest day, but certainly in Sydney's west it's certainly a bit warmer and a bit more humid the further away you get from the water. We've got a late free kick here, lots of stoppage, more than 5 minutes at the end of the first half, and Adriana Taranto is going to try and use that wind to drop it into a dangerous area, but Wanderers' defence prevails. Whistle's in the mouth? No, not quite. Yes, it is. Half-time. And it means that it's 1-1. And so Western United, are they on track to dropping points for the first time? Serena Bolden put Western Sydney in front, but Hannah Keane moved to the top of the Golden Boot race by scoring her 6th of the campaign, and it means that it's dead level at the break.
And it is Canberra United with a 2-0 lead at McKellar Park in our other simultaneous game on Dubzone this afternoon. Don't forget to use that hashtag Dubzone throughout the halftime break. Melissa Barbieri will be joining us in just a moment's time to chat about the Melbourne Derby tomorrow. But we showed you our Liberty A-League passes at the start of the pre-game today. Registrations are open at keepup.com.au. So if you're under the age of 16, if you're a registered football participant in Australia, don't forget to get your hands on a Liberty A-League pass. Oh, look, Newcastle Jets. Who have you got, Gigi?
Oh, look at Canberra United here.
Hey, fancy that. It is Gigi with bragging rights at halftime, but you can get your Liberty A-League pass. Don't forget to go to keepup.com.au to find yours. And while we're on the subject of keepup.com.au, for all the latest football news from here in Australia, but also from right up around the world, you should have the Keep Up app. You should keep across it all week. And this is what is featuring as the Liberty A-League goal of the week this week on Keep Up.
For Hayward, but dispossessed. Now the strike from range. Can it make its way in? It does! For Canberra United, and Annalie Grove beat from a long way out. Unbelievable. Canberra United as they double their advantage.
But in terms of the 2 strikes on goal by Alana Janchevsky and Paige Zoyce, what a tremendous occasion for these two. They've grown up in Victoria, playing at Amy Park. I saw some different narratives throughout the week around they went as Victory fans, as kids, and now they're playing in that stadium and scoring goals. One against a side who she was a former train-on player, and that's not a not normal situation. There's a lot of movement within the league, right? You have to go where you're going to get your opportunity. But certainly a tremendous occasion for both players on the weekend.
Happy to be proven wrong in that instance as well, but great job by her.
This is lovely from Sydney. Hunter through for Haley. Haley, that is brilliant. Madison Haley still going. Madison Haley!
Finish!
Oh my word!
That is individual brilliance. I mean, yeah.
That is sensational from the American to grab her second of the game and third of the season. Finishes do not get better than that.
That was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. We looked the run across the defender. She's lost Rankin. Rankin's got no hope there. And she's just toe chipped it over the top of her.
That is the cheekiest of cheek from Madison Haley.
Hi Dobson. First, I would like to thank everyone who voted. I'm very happy to win the Player of the Month for December. I know a lot of talented players were nominated, and I would like to congratulate all of them, but especially my 2 teammates, Emina and Babs. Also, I have really enjoyed the league so far, and being back, it's been great. But this performance, it's only possible because the support of the club, all my teammates, the coaches. So I'm really, really grateful to be part of this amazing club. Melbourne City, thank you so much. And again, thank you everyone who voted and the Chilean community in Australia. I cannot wait to get back and to compete for the championship.
Maria Rojas there, our Liberty A-League Player of the Month. And just quietly, Gigi, City cannot wait to have her back in the mix.
Why wouldn't they as well? The quality that she brought to that team, and they're missing her. They're really missing her at the moment.
It was a strong lineup for Player of the Month, Kat, but we also had some questions about best kits, and Rojas there showing us just how strong some of the kits around are.
Yeah, I told you my favourite colour is red. That kit was beautiful. I want a copy of that. That's lovely. Speaking of tweets, we had so many come through, and there was so much action in that game we couldn't jump into all of them, but let's revisit a bit of this goalkeeper discussion because it seems to be lighting up on Twitter. I think we've got people really talking, and there's some questions that have continued off some of the statements that we made around development of players and that decision to go overseas because you're essentially being set up to somewhat be a better player potentially given the better development of those players overseas. But the question is around development locally, and this is from Kate once again, just saying, what are we going to do to improve the development system here so that players aren't feeling like they need to go to the likes of a Champions League team in order to develop as a player and be an option for the Matildas?
Well, I think it's about making the leap to the right club, isn't it? I think the experience of Indy Riley, Angie Beard, they went to Fortuna Horing in Denmark. Yeah, they enjoyed their time there, but both of them have found their way back to the Liberty A-League now. And I wonder, those decisions about, Iceland, a lot of players have gone there, maybe hasn't been the best experience, but, it's about making the leap to a club that's going to be a sustainable, professional, full-time job sort of decision rather than simply living, almost beyond your means just to play football, but in a different country as well.
Yeah, because it's an experience that you can really never get elsewhere. Just going overseas at some point in a player's career, I think, is an important part of their development. As for where, I think Tayo's point is so important because we've known so many of these Matildas girls, NPL girls who have gone over and actually had a really terrible time, struggled, whether it be with language, with conditions, with weather, and the PFA has had to get involved in some of those, and rightly so. So it's not always the best move going overseas. In terms of what we need to do here in Australia, there's a lot of answers to that question. That's a whole can of worms. We can get into it, but there's a lot in the way of development, and some clubs, some pathways do it really well here in Australia, and some less so.
Yeah. A conversation that I reckon may continue throughout the second half of our simultaneous games here on Dubzone the Savo. But while it is half-time at Wanderers Football Park and indeed McKellar Park, we can have a chat with former Matildas captain who played at 4 Women's World Cups, Melissa Barbieri. She's the Melbourne City goalkeeper, and Bubs has been good enough to join us now. Bubs, it is so good to see you in your 26th year as a professional footballer, 26th season. What would it mean to you to bring up that century of A-League women's games?
Oh, it'd be a huge honour. It'd be, a culmination of a lot of games played. As a goalkeeper, you don't get to say that you get to start everyone, and you certainly don't get to come on, in as many as you'd like. So having the 100 is a really important feat, especially I already probably have over 100. But nobody's counting the NSL games back in the day. It's only W League games. So
this is like the FIFA stats up against Brazil's home stats all over again. Bubs, we cannot wait to celebrate officially with you when that happens very soon. We want to look ahead to the Melbourne Derby tomorrow as well for your side up against Melbourne Victory. How spicy is that contest? How spicy does it remain?
Oh, it's always the biggest battle on the calendar. I mean, we do have another rival now with Western United, but it certainly is the biggest bash on the calendar. Whenever we get the fixtures out, we always look for those ones that, we're ready and able to get into it when that time comes. And we know the fans are going to be out in force. It's been a tumultuous time for our fans out there lately. So we always want to just put on a good show, make them feel like they're important and they're supported by us, and the best way we can do that is to play well and get the win.
Bubs, thanks so much for joining us. I'm curious to understand, how do you, as a legend goalkeeper yourself, assess the quality of goalkeeping across our league at the moment? Are we at the right place? Do we need to do more? What's your take on the quality of goalkeeping across the Liberty A-League?
I'm going to have to put it in the other court here, Gracie. I'm going to ask, how good are the goalkeeping coaches at each of the teams? So for me, a lot of the mistakes that are happening in the goalkeeping realm, the fact that we have so many international goalkeepers coming from overseas, what are we doing in terms of coaching? How are we getting the girls up to scratch? What feedback are they getting game in, game out? Because some of the times you kind of think, they're not being taught, they're not being told what to do, they're not being reviewed. I mean, I do countless review sessions of every game, of every training session, and that's why my goalkeeper coach is, one of the, Australian goalkeeper coaches. So it's just up to what resources are being given to goalkeepers. I know that a lot of the mistakes that are happening are just down to experience. But also the ones that are making mistakes are also very experienced goalkeepers. So that just says to me that there's something going wrong in terms of the feedback and what they need to be doing to make those saves.
No, it's a really good point. And I guess speaking of coaching then, if you were the Matildas coach, who would be your Matildas goalkeeping picks at the moment based on current form alone?
My 3 goalkeepers that are playing in European football. That's it. At the end of the day, it's about, where are they playing? Even if they're not playing, what kind of environment are they in? Champions League football. That's the league that I want my national team goalkeepers to be playing in.
Bubs, thank you so much for joining us. So my question is around the up-and-coming World Cup. Obviously, it's so exciting that we have a Women's World Cup on Australian soil, and every episode of Dubzone, we're always talking. Cute cat, by the way, walking around in the back.
That was my Doberman.
Oh, okay.
Same.
Yeah, they're pretty similar, aren't they?
Yes, they're
Hopefully
very
we'll get
similar.
another shot of that, and then I'll be reminded that I said something completely ridiculous. There we go. Nothing like a cat whatsoever. Well, that actually happened. Matilda's watch. Goalkeepers aside, are there any young guns that you think should be considered for this next World Cup?
In terms of goalkeepers?
Doesn't have to be goalkeepers, just any younger players that you've noticed really standing out in this season in particular.
Well, I'm kind of biased
You can be
in my
biased, that's
selection.
fine.
I get Holly McNamara is coming back from an ACL injury. She's looking really sharp in training. It's not long till she's back. Then you've got, players from Sydney FC. I don't mind, Hunter, Nash for Melbourne Victory, also good quality player. And then the likes of, Checker, Chinema. I could name a few in my team, especially.
And speaking of your team,
Okay.
Bubs, and you were talking about the coaching there. I wanted to ask you about the new coach, Dario, because I've been so impressed with what I saw on your very Access All areas and the way he was coaching the team, the dynamic that he enjoyed with you. But what's it been like as he's got used now to not winning every week? Because there's been some challenging results there. So has the messaging changed, or has he developed before your eyes as a coach? Because obviously you've played for so many and been one yourself. I guess you know the challenges that it's all about.
No, Dario is consistent. I mean, Dario and Rado are pretty much cut from the same cloth in terms of football's philosophy. There was a reason why the club was really confident in taking over, having Dario take over from Rado, and then Rado stepping up to, the senior men's team. They're all very much cut from the same cloth in terms of dynamics and how they go about getting the best out of their players. There's definitely no yelling, no screaming. Maybe a little bit annoyed that we go away from our football philosophy sometimes, and that we tend to, if we aren't motivated to get the job done by ourselves, there's really not much he can do about it. So he tries to get us to refocus on our principles, and that's how we get the job done, because we put a lot of faith in the way that we play, and we know that we play a brand of football that can be stressful. It's uncomfortable for a lot of players to play such possession-based football, which means that you can come under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of pressure. And I've just really loved the way how Dario he hasn't changed in terms of what's been happening. He probably did get a bit upset of us because of our effort levels, but other than that, it's business as usual.
And before going into this derby, the win against Adelaide midweek was so impressive because it was a slow burn. There wasn't a great deal being created at either end of the pitch. And then you had the quality to execute those two late chances. You leave with a 3-0 instead of a 1-0. How much confidence does that give the team going into the derby that even on a day where you have to be patient, doesn't really matter who it is. You've got players that are coming off the bench that can score goals, that can give your attack a new dimension, but also that you are able to stay engaged in what must, I imagine, have been quite a grind of a game, given that it was largely a midfield battle for so much of it.
Yeah, it's important to realise that the game against Western Sydney Wanderers, we weren't patient. So we recognise that, we need to be, confident in the way that we build up, and that you're not going to score every 10 minutes in every game. You're not going to score 4 bangers. You're not going to score 5. You're not going to come away with all those wins, especially as the games start to bank up. I mean, we had probably 7 top performances, and then we kind of fell off the bandwagon a little bit, but we got back on it against Adelaide. And it's about, knowing our strengths, and that sometimes teams will come out and they will try and battle us. And to be fair, everybody plays their best game against Melbourne City. I mean, every time we step onto the park, sometimes I think when I'm watching the Dub Zone and I can see the games being played, I think they would never have done that against us, because they're always they're so on their game. Whenever they play against us, they would never accidentally kick it into their goal, or it would never ricochet off someone else, or one of our girls' faces and go in. We always have to really strive and really have to score some spectacular goals. No real luck comes our way in terms of that sort of caper.
Bubs, it is so good to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us ahead of the Melbourne Derby tomorrow. I reckon both teams will well and truly be on their game for that one. Enjoy the game, and we cannot wait to see you bring up that century and join us again on Dub Zone soon.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Melissa Barbieri, Melbourne City goalkeeper, joining us there. And Teo, we've had kickoff at McKellar Park and Wanderers Football Park, the second half of both of these games. It is Western Sydney Wanderers 1, Western United 1, and at McKellar Park, Canberra United, the home side, lead the Jets 2-0 at the moment as we head back to Wanderers Football Park.
Yes, the goal scorers for Canberra in the first half were Michelle Heyman and Cheng Shu Wu, and then here in this game between Western Sydney Wanderers and Western United, it was Wanderers opening the scoring through Serena Bolden before the equaliser came from Hannah Keane. That is why we have this one-all draw at the moment, and looking at that looping ball into the area, which is dealt with by Hilary Beale here. So the stats from this game are fairly balanced, 7 total shots to 6, and Wanderers with 3 on target to Western United's 1. Certainly had better opportunities to take a 2-0 lead when they were in the ascendancy, Western Sydney Wanderers, and they'll be hoping to reassert themselves on the game right here. One sub at halftime, Julia Sardo coming off at right back for Stacey Papadopoulos for Western United. So still no Silvicki, still no Legazzo, still no Angie Beard. What minute will they turn to those players to try and change this game? And Western Sydney Wanderers today, they've got a fairly young bench here. Amy Chisari, Sienna Silvesca, combined age of 32. Ella Abdul-Massi, another 16-year-old, but we need to go around the grounds, Neve.
We sure do. Let's head back to McKellar Park, where there has been another goal. Canberra United taking on the Newcastle Jets. And I'm afraid to say it is GG with bragging rights once again, Teo.
I was hoping that Newcastle might be able to launch another comeback for us here in order to see what they can do as far as reviving their fortunes in the match from 2-0 down. But we see Canberra on the move. That's Cheng Shu Wu playing it out to the left. Look at how quickly they're countering here. Newcastle scrambling to get numbers back in time. And the ball just bobbles into the 6-yard box, and it's an easy finish for Michelle Heyman. Nikki Flannery again in the build-up. She's been vital to all 3 goals today, but the assist, well, it might go to Vesna Milivojevic, but it took a touch off a defender, and we know that sometimes that can get the assist taken away. But speaking purely out of self-interest, no other reason from my fantasy team, that is an assist for Vesna Milivojevic, and it's Canberra 3, Newcastle 0.
Yeah, well, Michelle Heyman, 87 goals in this league, and she gets herself
into it's back on.
She gets herself into the right positions. But in that replay, what I was watching was where Michelle started her run from, and it was just at the point in which Wu played that ball out wide, and Michelle's made a 40, 50-yard dash into the 6-yard box for an easy tap away. And when you've got a striker who is willing to do that kind of work, and Michelle running in completely unmarked, uncontested, it'll be the easiest finish she has all day.
Yeah, I've seen a little tweet here that's just taken me back to a really good moment that just happened. If you missed it, I mistook Melissa Barbieri's Doberman for a cat. Not my best moment.
When you said it, I was like, that's definitely a Doberman.
Yeah, that was definitely a Doberman. But you know what? I was so focused on Bubs, and then all I saw was this black tail behind her and thought it was a cat on the couch. It was actually a Doberman just dominating the room behind her.
Which was the moment you knew that career as a vet, not going to happen.
And
maybe
you know what?
stick
As
to
someone
football,
who
cat
considers
dad.
themselves quite an animal enthusiast,
yeah,
I'm really disappointed with myself. Anyway, moving on. There's other things we can talk about.
We're going to have a look back at the first half highlights. Grace Gill says we can't move on without seeing them, Teo. And it started with, once again, Newcastle Jets' defence being severely tested.
It did, and the stats in this game were just one-way traffic in the first half. It's already now in the early stages of the second half. 14 total shots, 4 on target, 2.59 XG as well. So Canberra not just creating chances, they're creating good chances to score. The fact they've scored 3 from 2.95 means they're more or less bang on. That was Cheng Shu Wu scoring with the deflection off the face, and good of her teammates to go in and just make sure that she wasn't injured in scoring her first A-League women's goal, first Chinese player to score in the Chinese national team player to score in the A-League women's. And Grace, the third goal then in the second half, just ramping home how dominant Canberra are as they fly up the table and they continue to show top 4 credentials here.
Well, McKellar Park is so hard to go to, and as a T often sits on this couch and she talks about being a former player going to Canberra. It's just a fortress there, and the stadium, the way that it's positioned is that you come out and the fans are sort of on top of you. It's loud. They let you know that they're there. So for Newcastle, that's sort of one challenge. But the next challenge for an informed Canberra United, that's a really tough one to come up against.
Is it time for Canberra to maybe go into the Rolodex, great recruiters in years gone by, and start thinking about a guest marquee for the back half of the home and away season? Guest marquee contract is 9 games. Is there someone out there that they can cast the net out to in order to take this team to another level?
Yeah, Canberra has a really wonderful history of recruiting well, bringing in international players. I cast my mind back on a couple of years. We had Ariane Hinkst, German international,
World Cup
winner, Laurie Lindsay, US Women's National Team, Steph Oakes. We've had class players at Canberra United, and look, I'm sure that net continues to be cast wide. As for sort of timing, when, who, it's a great question, but there's a good history of recruitment there.
Let's head back to Wanderers Football Park, Taya, because we've got an indirect free kick for the Wanderers here.
These are the moments that the still photographers dream of, because you get the massive walls, and you just get scenarios that in a game you would never otherwise see players standing in particular positions on the pitch. So Western United, they're building a stadium, and now they're building a wall, and it doesn't work.
Wow.
Western Sydney Wanderers have taken the lead from the indirect free kick, and it's Amy Harrison.
Wow, there you go.
And so Wanderers are back in front, and we saw all those players, but they weren't able to block the ball on a very tight angle as well. I'm intrigued as to exactly who this broke through. Beth Gordon there with the little touch off. Harrison right in at the near post, and the combination of about 8 players were not able to keep it out of the net. And I have no idea. It's almost going to be frame perfect to work out how the ball got through.
Well, I'm glad you have no idea, Teo, because I'm looking at that baffled as to how that actually squeezed in at the near post there, which it looked like it did. And when you've got a wall set up there, that shouldn't be making its way through at that near post. But yeah, I'd love to see a slow-mo on that to see where that found its way through.
Harrison's second goal of the season. She scored in the game in Tamworth against Newcastle earlier in the campaign. It's her 6th A-League women's goal in appearance number 76. So she doesn't score often, Amy Harrison, but she has got 2 for the season.
Am I wrong? We don't see indirect free kicks very often. I feel like we see goals result from indirect free kicks even less often, Gigi.
And especially at that kind of point-blank range when you've just got traffic and bodies and everything in the way there. But yeah, I mean, credit to Western Sydney Wanderers. That was, to Newcastle. No, it was Western Sydney Wanderers. Sorry, I'm getting my games mixed up here. That was really well taken.
And that throws down the gauntlet to Western United once again. And our little couch divide here of who was going to win this game. I think 2 for Western, 2 for Wanderers today. Well, it's Wanderers back in the lead, and we know that they're a confidence team and a momentum team, and now they can strike while they've retaken the lead. Because Amy Harrison's a very popular player, and you could see there both the fans and teammates getting around her in that celebration.
Also so hard to stop that kind of strike when there is that amount of traffic in amongst it. So hard for a goalkeeper to see it, to get a touch on it, and just really hard. But I think Amy Harrison, she went for the right approach there, and what a moment.
So interesting to hear her say midweek that in her return to the Liberty A-League and playing in the warm conditions after playing in Europe, she was still really getting used to the heat, Teo, and finding it hard to breathe at times during games. Angie Beard there on the bench looking to get her first minutes back in an Aussie environment. But obviously that transition, that switch for players takes time to readjust to the Aussie climate, even for the Australian players.
Yeah, look, I think that, match minutes in the legs was always going to be the key for Harrison, and you're right about the environment. The Dutch League, I mean, the only other player to have come out to Australia from that competition is Marushka Walders, who has looked decent but not brilliant for Adelaide, and hopefully she's going to hit her straps and lead that Adelaide team back to some better results soon. But Harrison, look, it's great for her that, she's a leader in this team as well, and I think that can't be underestimated too. You become a player that hits your mid-20s, all of a sudden you would know this feeling, Grace. You have to take on the leadership responsibility because the players around you all get so much younger.
You're suggesting I'm over my mid-20s? Wow.
You've got the Liberty A-League pass, under 16s only.
Exactly.
That makes us all very young. Yeah.
But it's right. At that sort of middle 20s age range, you do step up. Whether or not you've played overseas for the Matildas, you just have a more mature head. And Amy Harrison has done that really well.
Yeah. Speaking of mature players. There's just one quick comment in here that I just wanted to throw, which was just about Michelle Heyman. Obviously, she's so experienced and brings so much to the table, but a real testament to how, as a striker, you have to take advantage of every opportunity, and that's what Amy Harrison did in that moment, that's for sure.
He was a pretty special guest at Wanderers Football Park today, and he's been good enough to join us on Dub Zone. Alan Stajic, the coach of the Philippines, is there. Stadge, it is so good to see you. Can I ask you about Serena Bolden to begin with? What a gun player she is, and isn't she lighting up the Liberty A-League? Can you tell us from a national team perspective what she's like as a player?
Yeah, look, she's a little bit of everything we've seen in the last game and a half. She's exuberant, she's got energy. She's got a lot of runs off the ball, a lot of high intense actions, and sometimes if she can improve her quality, she probably could have had 3 or 4 goals already in the last 2 games. But look, she's shown that she's a both games so far, which has been really pleasing.
Thanks so much for joining us, Stadge. And look, interested to understand your plan for the year. Obviously, had a lot of success so far with the Philippines national team, but what's your approach to the Women's World Cup?
Try and win as many games as we can, Gracie. Pretty simple, but look, we're obviously the underdog. Never been there before and never played anywhere near that calibre of teams before, let alone in a major tournament like that. So, last year we really tried to build the experience of the team and played 30 games across the whole span of the world. We went to every continent, bar Africa, and tried to mix with some of the better teams in the world. And again, in February, we've got we've got Iceland, Wales and Scotland in the Pinatar Cup, which is really good experience for us. We've got Olympic Games qualifiers in April. We've got the SEA Games, which are massive, for Southeast Asia in May. And then we're trying to lock up some games in June just before we get to New Zealand. So, look, it's going to be a really, really big year for us and hopefully build a lot of momentum for the game moving forward back home in the Philippines.
Stadge, you must be relieved that Jacqueline Savicki's back on the bench. We got to see her very briefly against Wellington back in the second round of the season. She's been out since, kind of managing her body and her return to full-time serious competitive football on a regular basis. How important has this Western United stint been for her, though, in order to sort of get serious training environment and now in the back half of the season, some serious match minutes?
Yeah, look, it's important for every player in our team. When we went to the Asian Cup last year, only 3 of the 23 players had a club. So there was 20 out of 23 who were clubless and hadn't played or trained in a competitive environment for basically the 12 to even, in some cases, 24 months before that. So now we're up to 6 or 7 that have got big clubs. There's a couple in Sweden, in Norway playing. We've got 2 obviously here now in the A-League as well. We've got 1 playing in Serbia. So we're building up their playing experience. And, Jackie's just one of them that we're trying to really push into that next level of football to get them that intense training when we're not in camp, which is really important, as we know.
And as someone who obviously is no stranger to both squad composition and coaching in the Liberty A-League, or the W League as it was back then, I need to ask you, how has Western United been able to do this? They have 11 players that had never played in the league before. They had 15 Australian players that were not in the league last year. And 4 of the North American players that they've brought out, whether they're, Jackie being half Canadian, whether it's the Guyanese American Sydney Cummings or Keane, as well, or Hillary Beale, those 4 Americans had no NWSL experience between them. 0 appearances in the NWSL. Where have they come from? How have they done it? Is it recruiting? Is it coaching? Is it intangibles? If you were coaching against them, if you were still in this league, what would you have made of where this team has come from and how?
Yeah, look, Melbourne City had a template a few years ago where they put together an unbelievable squad when they first came into the competition, and maybe Western United calibre on paper isn't at that level, but certainly put it down to Mark and his coaching staff and recruiting. They've recruited for what they want, and obviously they've spent a bit of time together in the NPL there as well with Mark and the coach. So they had that little bit of fluidity as a group beforehand and knowledge of the coach, and he had knowledge of the players. And, Jess McDonald is really a standout in terms of being a little bit of an X factor for him. Played for America a few times in WSL for Courage and winning the league so many times over there. So she provides that little bit extra for them. But there's no doubt that they've got a great balance. They've got a great work ethic. I watched them play down in Melbourne during the week against Sydney, and we all know Sydney have been there or thereabouts as the best team in the comp over the last couple of years. And it was really an intense game and a high-level game. So, I know the Tarantos have played in the A-League before, Melbourne Victory, and a couple of other girls have been on the fringes. But, they've put together a really good squad, and the coaching and everything around the team has been at the highest of levels. So, you have to give everyone at the club, including Mark, full marks and 10 out of 10 for what they've done so far. But as we know, long way to go, and they've got to keep it going. But for the moment, it's 10 out of 10 from everyone.
Stadge, before we let you go, can I ask you about the vibe surrounding this Philippines national side ahead of the Women's World Cup? We've seen the Filipino community in Australia come out to support the players, but also back in the Philippines about featuring on the biggest stage of all. Where are the excitement levels at a few months out from the big dance?
Yeah, look, I think you touched on it. We all saw the Men's World Cup just recently. What a boost even we have. Football back here's had a little bit of a having that energy and excitement of the Socceroos winning a game and competing at that level and playing against Lionel Messi. You just don't get that in any other forum in world sport, let alone in football. So, to have us on that stage and competing at that stage for the first time and playing against Norway, who have former Player of the Year in Hedberg, and Simone Graham Hansen, who plays for Barcelona, we're really coming up against some of the best players in the world. So, I know back home in the Philippines, it's been a tremendous boost to the profile of football, where football is probably like it is here in Australia, the number 3 or 4 sport. So, we have a lot of similar issues in trying to boost the profile of the sport, both through in the football community, but more importantly throughout the rest of the community. So, the World Cup's going to give it a good boost, and hopefully, we perform really well and show what we're capable of.
We can't wait. Stadge, we know you keep a super close eye on the Liberty A-League as well. Thank you so much for joining us on Dub Zone this afternoon.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Alan Stadgic, the coach of the Philippines, joining us on Dub Zone this Savo. Don't forget to keep your questions coming in. Hashtag Dub Zone is the one to use as we head back to Wanderers Football Park, where at the moment, Teo, it is the home side, Western Sydney, with their Philippines international in Serena Bolden, who's on the score sheet once again. They have the lead this afternoon.
They do have the lead, and it's Amy Harrison's goal in this second half, which separated the teams after it was 1-1. At half-time. Some of the numbers: Western Sydney Wanderers, 8 total shots, 4 on target. Western United, 6 shots, but only the 1 on target, which was the goal. So they need to create a bit more. And at the moment, they're asking a few more questions of this defence. You see, Chloe Lagazzo has been subbed on here. So she is thrown right into the mix. And Grace, we've seen this before. We know that Chloe Lagazzo has come on, and you think of the Perth game in particular, where she turned that match on its head. The game against Melbourne City, where Hilary Beale's penalty save was then followed by Chloe Lagazzo scoring a double. Western United have done this throughout the season, but they need to dig deep and do it once again.
Yeah, look, this is not unfamiliar territory for this team. And to your question from earlier on of what time would we see a player like Lagazzo be subbed on, unsurprisingly, it's around the 60 or 70th minute mark. Here she is again, stepping up for Western United. Look, I'm sure the impact she makes, whether it's her set-piece delivery, which she steps up for, whether it's corners, free kicks, her energy when she comes on. She's that kind of player that she just is everywhere. She buzzes all around. And I think that sort of impact lifts the players around her as well. So I think that's the kind of impact Mark Tocaso will be looking to get out of Chloe and to get out of the girls around her.
It's that mental side of things once again, Teo, and that trust that as a team they've been in this position a number of times throughout the season, and in every single one of those games they've come out with 3 points, and that builds confidence, doesn't it?
And we just saw the number 23 there. Angie Beard is on as well. Angie Beard has come on for Carly Johnson. So the subs are starting to take place here for Western United. They're not going to wait too much longer in terms of chasing this game. And some experienced heads out there now, some really talented top-level players complementing the team in order for Western to challenge. Lagazzo is immediately attracting the attention of the Wanderers defenders, and the ball is now coming out in the form of Malia Steinmetz. If Wanderers can score a third on the counter, they might be looking good for the day, but Serena Bolden has managed to nick in before the keeper and then misses an open net. And that would have been 3-1, and Serena Bolden knows what a great chance that was. Hilary Beale had been safe as houses up until that point this season, and Bolden couldn't capitalise on the missed opportunity to claim there.
Well, this ball over the top from Steinmetz, what the precision on that, a bit of hesitation from Beale, which we don't normally see on there. She thought the bounce was going to reach her, and you can see her just trying not to get her hand over the line or her foot over the line when catching that one. But Bolden, that needed to be in the back of the net.
Oh, will Wanderers rue that? Because we saw in the first half they missed 2 golden chances to go 2-0 up, and then next thing we know, Western United will level.
So interesting not to see her just come out of the box and put a massive boot on that one. It was almost as if there was a force field around the box there. She was like, this is my area. I can't leave it, Gigi.
Yeah, it did look like she thought about getting it with her hands and then realised the bounce wasn't sort of as big or as high as she anticipated. But you're right, that needed to be just coming out with your feet, clearing that into Rose Ed. But that Bolden, wow, what a missed chance that is.
And so
She's quite lucky that a goal didn't come from that.
Very.
Western Sydney Wanderers themselves are yet to turn to their bench here in the second half. Just before we spoke to Alan Stajic, we were talking about what a young, inexperienced bench they have, though, Grace. Amy Chisari, 16, Sienna Silvestre, 16, Ella Abdelmassi, 16, and Kush LaRue, 19 or 20. So they don't actually have a senior head on that bench other than Sham Karmas, the backup goalkeeper. And I wonder if that means Kat Smith will be reticent to turn to the bench here as she needs some experienced heads to hold out on this 2-1 lead.
Yeah, look, I thought Kush LaRue has done quite well when she came on in previous appearances. And sometimes I think it's that youthful fearlessness coming into a game. Yeah, there's nerves around it, but you see these young players come on and they just take a game on and just try and put the weight of the game on their shoulders. And we've seen that happen before. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see one of these youngsters come on.
Or Angie Beard with a tough call there with that foul on Liv Price. Goes and apologises there. But well, we know what a tough customer it is. I mean, she captained Melbourne Victory to a championship as a left back. She got called into the Matildas last year for the games against Portugal and Spain and actually turned the call down. And I know we've delved into worst kept secret territory with the Remy Simpson transfer to Leicester City, but I mean at the moment, Angie Beard is waiting for the dominoes to fall into place to make that one-time switch, like Ali Green, like Indy Riley, to play for the Philippines. We're just waiting for it to happen. It hasn't happened yet, and no one's commenting publicly about it because there's a lot of paperwork involved and FIFA's involved too. But I mean, she turned down the Matildas, Grace. She was finally back in the fold and decided, no, I need to make some decisions based on my football and take it in a different direction.
Well, and you're right. We saw the exact same thing with a player like Ali Green. Good performances for years, and same thing with Angie Beard. And from their point of view, if they have the opportunity to go and play for another national team where they will be getting minutes, they'll be attending World Cups, Olympics, then why not take that opportunity?
I mean, I can tell you, we were talking about, strikers and Melina Ayres being injured and Remy Simpson going overseas. If Indy Riley comes back to Brisbane and goes a goal a game for the back half of the season, and we've lost it to New Zealand, I mean, that's criminal. I mean, for Indy's sake, I hope she has a good half season and scores goals, and New Zealand will be thrilled too. But, I mean, she's 20, and we've let her slip through the net. We had her first. We capped her. We put her on the field for the Matildas, and now all of a sudden, that's it. She's a Kiwi from here on.
Yeah.
Joey Lynch, sorry,
go ahead.
Joey Lynch commented, Teo, saying that it was only a matter of time before you gave the panel a full breakdown of Calder's three-headed dragon when Angie Beard came on.
Well, I mean, but part of the three-headed dragon, Catherine Zimmerman, is now at Melbourne Victory, and Alex Sinclair is not on the bench today. So it's only
a
Beard.
one-headed dragon.
It's a one, yeah.
That sounded funnier in my head, if I'm honest.
Well, you've had some interesting times with animals today.
I have. It's not my area, apparently. That's fine. We are going to look at those poll results as well for whether or not you guys think Western United can continue their undefeated run. Looks like they've come into a bit of trouble in this Western against Western game. And you voted, it looks like you all agree that Western Sydney Wanderers may very well win this one and cause the first upset of the season for Western United.
Well, we were talking about what the record winning streak for a startup team is. Melbourne City won their first 12 games, and the home and away season was only 12 games in the old W League when they first came in the 2015-16 season. And then they won on penalties in the semi-final, meaning that effectively that was a draw. So the record winning streak for a startup team was 12. Western United came in today on 7. And it just goes to show what an achievement it was in that first season from Melbourne City. But they also had a really super team of the time with some top-class players. Now, Bolden was calling for the pass, was trying to get back on side there, and then had a quick glance at the assistant referee before driving in this cross. And the follow-up here from Matos, who's never scored in the A-League Women's, and the ball is cleared out for a corner kick. But Western Sydney, they're rallying here. They're getting back on top.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like momentum is starting to swing back in their direction. Bolden, she continues to be instrumental. A little look up before she's put that one in, and that ball did drop quite nicely to Harding too, who couldn't quite get the clean strike she would have liked on it. But Liv Price, a couple of occasions, it looks like she's stretching out some cramp there as well. So it may be a forced change for the Wanderers.
Look, I'm not ready to write off Western United yet. You look at these two benches, and that is a strong bench that Western United have at their disposal today, Teo. But is this an example of the confidence that one win brings? Before they beat City, they hadn't won a game of Liberty A-League in 364 days. Amy Harrison spoke this week about the different vibe at training, the different feeling and the confidence they had taking on another top-of-the-table side that absolutely they could make it back-to-back wins.
Well, back when the season was only 12 games, Wanderers would be the classic dead cat bounce team because in a 12-game season, they would have been mathematically out of the finals race. You know, they would have won a couple of games in, game 8, 9, 10, 11, and then head into the off-season having repaired the ladder and maybe saved face. Now, it's not even the halfway point of the season. I mean, Game 9's the halfway point. No one's played their 9th game yet. This is Western Sydney Wanderers winning a couple in a row and latching themselves back on to the conversation. On the Dubzone Instagram page, I actually threw the question out there pre-show, which team in the bottom 4 can make a run in the second half of the season? I think I'd be shocked if Wanderers aren't winning that poll on the basis of it. I think the other teams down there were Perth, Wellington and Newcastle. And Perth is another great example of a team that, things haven't gone how they would have wanted in the first half of the season. But all you need to do is win 2 or 3 in a row, get a bit of belief up, and there's now enough games in the season that it's not a dead cat bounce anymore.
I love that about this extended season now too, that we are 8 games in and the top 4 is not yet decided and it's a long way off from being decided. There's so much congestion in the middle of the pack there.
Big moment here. Jacqueline Savicki, we barely saw her for a couple of minutes of stoppage time over in New Zealand when she made her first appearance for Western United against the Wellington Phoenix. She comes on here, one-cap Canadian international who has since switched to the Philippines. And this is a big moment here to see what she can do in midfield. Coming on for Emma Robers, who is the engine room of Western United in terms of GPS numbers and distance covered. So Savicki here, can she provide a bit of quality? And Amy Chisari, the youngster, we spoke about how young that Wanderers bench was. She comes on for just her second appearance, and she had a really good season in New South Wales NPL playing for the Football New South Wales Institute team. Very promising young player, and as we see, plenty of teenagers get these opportunities, Grace, and she's another one that I think she's kind of, a metronome sort of control the ball at NPL level sort of player who commands the ball a lot and looks to impose herself on the game. It's a very different story when you come in and you do it at A-League women's level.
It is, and I think obviously the league has changed somewhat from a few years ago when it was filled with sort of older women, older girls, internationals of that really high caliber quality. And now we've got these youngsters coming through, 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are getting their opportunities. And imagine coming on and going up against a US women's national team gold medalist in, one of your first appearances in the A-League women's competition. Like just that contrast of player, not just in age, but in just actual exposure and experience. Like what a moment.
Not just that, going up against Chloe Lagazo too.
Of course,
straight into it, you're going to have to go and win 50-50 balls against her if you want Wanderers to hold on to a 2-1 win and lead this game.
Yeah, and some of these girls getting photos with Chloe and Jess and people like that after the game. It's just, it's a lovely part of it. Competition aside, when they finish, they think, wow, these girls are my heroes, and they've watched them growing up too, which is pretty special.
It's really, like you said, it's special that the game has gotten to that point where the game's been around long enough that a young woman can be playing and also be taking a photo with a player who probably inspired them at some point to take the game more seriously as well.
We spoke last week about the December Coach of the Month nominees and the fact that there were no female coaches in that list. We talked about the female coaching pathway. How much is it testament to Kat Smith that, and the job's not done today by any means, but that after a really tough start to her first Liberty A-League season, they still maintained the confidence and they made some changes in terms of personnel, in terms of formation to beat Melbourne City last week and to absolutely be in the running today from a mentality perspective even. How much does that come down to the coach?
Yeah, look, I think it's massive. I think it's pretty easy in that situation when teams are losing games, performances aren't there, that a coach can lose a change room and lose the confidence that they have. But whatever Kat Smith has done in the last couple of weeks to get the group around, still hold faith and hope, and besides just Serena Bolden coming in, but just the group themselves, how they rally together. She's obviously changed something there, Teo.
I think it's personnel. Wanderers didn't know what their best 11 was. So we'll come back to this discussion.
As we head back to McKellar Park, where Canberra United are leading the Newcastle Jets 3-0, but we have had another goal, Teo.
And they're on the move down the left here, Canberra. So is there more pain on the way? That looks like it's a foul. Yep, free kick given. So was this from a dead ball situation? Here's the resulting free kick. Lauren Allen got a yellow card for it, no less. Ball dropped into the penalty area. It skims to the back post and in. And we're just waiting on who got the final touch. Hey, assist for Vesna Milivojevic. My fantasy team is in dreamland here. And the goal scorer, I'm being told, was Ellie Brush getting a glancing header. Look at that. Ellie Brush getting up for the header. First goal back since overcoming that torn ACL, which ended her season last year. Ellie Brush gets the goal. Canberra take a 4-0 lead now. And that is a fantastic moment for the leader of this team. Her 22nd A-League women's goal. What a return for a centre-back, Grace Gill. Ellie Brush, at 34 years of age, still got it.
Well, Ellie Brush headers McKellar Park. You know, they're things that we've known for Canberra United many years go really well together. And Brushy, she loves getting up for a header. So any set piece, she has great timing. She's not the tallest player in the world, but in terms of her timing, how she can read the flight of the ball, does that really well.
136 games, but 22 goals. I mean, on the all-time scorers list, Ellie Brush just sitting there as a centre-back, no less. One of the most prolific players finding the net in this league.
Well, it's impressive. And as I said, she's just got a really great read of flight of the ball, and any opportunity, a corner, set piece, she will be up there. So it's really, really great to see her rewarded for that.
Now, just on that, the Wanderers point, we were talking about how Kat Smith has turned it around. Let me give you some of the names of players that have been in and out of this team that haven't worked out. Angelique Christodoulou started the season. Mel Caceres started the season, got injured. Sheridan Gallagher out suspended today. Holly Caspers has had a handful of games. Yitka Chlestakova, I just don't think that worked out as a signing. She hasn't been able to do what an import should do, which is raise the level of performance of your team. Tess Bode got injured, went home, and they've had a raft of train-ons come into matchday squads, not necessarily sit on the bench. They really had to shuffle the pack extensively. But I think it was reflective of Kat Smith didn't know what her best 11 was. They're a lot closer to it today. They made one change and it was forced, as opposed to having to keep throwing things at the wall.
As we hear that there has been another goal at McKellar Park, I start to be filled with a little bit of dread every time we go back. But potentially, Teo, a moment of light for Newcastle.
Is this going to be yep, it looks like a flick header and it's in. So Newcastle get a consolation back. Cassidy Davis with the ball in. And is that Tara Andrews? Yes, it is. So the tallest woman in Newcastle prevails once again. Another goal for Tara Andrews. Not a great deal of celebration accompanying it, unfortunately, for the Jets, because they are 4-1 down. Now, Andrews is up to 45 A-League women's goals and continues to push up the all-time scorers list as a result.
Well, Canberra will be frustrated with that. They really would have loved to have kept a clean sheet. Tara Andrews, we know the goal-scoring quality that she has, and you know, that's one that, from what I could see on the replay there, she didn't have too much in the way of close attention to her. And when she is as tall as she is, just a little glancing header was all it took, and a nice finish nonetheless. But that's a frustrating one for Canberra. But for fans, home ground, 5-goal match so far, there's a lot to be cheering about. Just
back to the Wanderers point we were making before the goal. So we just ran through, 8 players that they've tried this year already, almost 2 full squads. Wanderers, I hate to say this, but yeah, they had the bye in round 1. They didn't announce many of their signings until that bye week between round 1 and round 2. If they paid the price here for just being slow starters, if they'd maybe been a bit more organised in pre-season, I know they played some friendlies, but if they'd just got their ducks in a row a bit earlier, could they have actually produced this level from the off? And instead of chasing their tail in the back half of the season, maybe it's indicative that they actually do have a squad of the quality to do this. It's just they didn't know what their best 11 was.
Yeah, I think they have been a little bit slow out the gates, but I find we see that most seasons where a team doesn't really get up to full pace until sort of midway or just over midway through the season, by which time it's almost a little bit too late. For the Wanderers, you hope that it's not too late, but certainly they're starting to hit their stride now. It looks like they've got those combinations a little bit more on song, and that's why they are actually putting away these chances. And yeah, when you just rattled through those names there that have just sort of tried and tested in and out, it makes a lot of sense as to why they haven't been able to lock down those results.
Do you know what I love on the Twitter front, Kat? How resilient and optimistic Novocastrians are. We are used to going down. We are used to seeing a comeback. And Jets fans in the Twitter sphere are absolutely predicting that it is game on here now.
They said comeback. They're saying comeback on the Twitter feed, which I think is It's a big call, but it's not impossible. We've seen these kinds of feats from the box office jets. But guys, we were talking about which team could revive the season
Out of the
at
bottom
this
four.
point of the bottom four at this point. And this was a question that Teo threw out on the Instagram socials earlier. And it's Western Sydney Wanderers that have come up 38% in the poll.
24% for Wellington Phoenix, though. So credit to our audience from New Zealand for just keeping the faith, because I'm not with you.
Well, we welcome our little corner of yellow. Of course we do.
Then again, we didn't see this revival coming from Wanderers. I mean, wouldn't it just be the most refreshing thing if Wellington turned around and did something similar out of the blue? They're just properly up for a game and shock a team by beating them. I mean, Wanderers are about to have knocked off basically the top two teams in the league in consecutive games if they can close this out here, which in theory means they themselves have to be considered a top team.
Giant killers, isn't it?
But I mean,
that's what they call them.
I mean, if you kill two giants, you're all of a sudden a fair bit taller just through default, aren't you?
Absolutely, you are. There was, on the Instagram Live as well, people were calling out Michelle Heyman as Matilda's option as well. And we were speaking about that consistency, the experience, and how Canberra United obviously have that depth. But it's no denying that Michelle Heyman plays such an important role on that squad. She's on the score sheet today. And it seems like week in, week out, she plays such an important role. Is she somebody who should be taken very seriously as a Matilda's option?
Yeah, I think at the start of the season, she spoke pretty frankly about wanting to put herself up in lights and not completely close off that option. Whether or not she's had the quality across the season, I'd say up to this point, she hasn't been scoring as consistently as she would expect herself to. And perhaps as some of our expectations of Michelle being the leading goal scorer of all time in this competition. So I think she's still got a little bit of work to do, but certainly if she continues on in this kind of form from now until the end of the season, scoring 1 or 2 goals a game, then absolutely she can be putting her hand up for a fringe position or pushing other people. Taya, we were talking about it earlier in that front selection of domestic place, Matilda's players, who's actually performing. And there's not a lot in the way of certainties in those positions.
I mean, Michelle Heyman is at the right team to rally around her and generate a PR campaign. Heyman wouldn't have been my top choice, but through the attrition of what's going on around the league, Remy leaving, Melina Ayres injured, Chelsea Dorber and Adelaide misfiring, none of the youngsters at Perth are ready. I would say, next World Cup cycle, we're probably going to be talking about someone like Alana Janchevsky, but not for this World Cup cycle.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And I think that Heyman, 4 goals in 8 now, involvement in more goals in that team which has many avenues to goal with Jale and Milivojevic and Grace Maher. I mean, maybe, but it's up to the Canberra fans. I mean, it's the right team and the right town with the right sort of local media to rally behind her and put a bit more of that pressure on. I mean, it's easy for us to say here on Dub Zone and say, cap Kirsty Fenton, but that's because it's obvious. I mean, if I sit here and say cap Michelle Heyman or bring Michelle Heyman back, then that's a different story.
With bringing up Milivojevic, I think there's another interesting conversation there around Aussies going off overseas and, for example, her representing the Serbian national team. We've seen her beautiful assist in this game, 2 beautiful assists, which you've benefited from in your fantasy. Is there a conversation too around not that we can't not let players go play where they want to play overseas, but that we need to look at kind of fostering that kind of performance and those players here?
But it's a great point because Milivojevic played like a handful of sub-appearances for Western Sydney Wanderers, probably felt a bit unloved and disengaged, so decided to use, her connection to Serbia to go and try something. She's cap-tied. She's played in Euro and World Cup qualifiers. She's 20. Same as Indy Riley, same age. I mean, when Courtney Vine was Indy Riley and Vesna Milivojevic's age, she hadn't even started scoring goals in the W League yet. She was still, an occasional sub for Brisbane, going down to Newcastle, getting that first opportunity to play regular minutes. And Courtney Vine exploded at age 22, turning 23. And here we are, we've lost 2 20-year-olds for good, for our future in Indy Riley and Vesna Milivojevic, yeah.
Yeah, I think she's been a really good sign-in for Canberra this year. She's really pleasantly surprised me, and that's not to say she didn't have the quality before, but I just hadn't seen much of her because, to your point, Teo, I hadn't seen her play much for Western Sydney or previous appearances. So it's been great to see her get a lot of match minutes because I think she's been a real creative
off the post.
force.
Sorry.
No, sorry
Western
needed.
United, that cross in, I think it might have been Jess McDonald's cross, just hit the post. It was a dipping cross shot, and it very nearly looped in and beat Jordan Bloomer there for what would have been the equaliser.
Wowee.
Remarkable. And it's a Western United side that has done that, Teo, so often over their previous 7 games.
They're coming like the Terminator here, Western United, but so close. And I think it was TJ Vlanich there next to the post who would have been just hoping she could have got the easiest tap in as well. And then look at that, it just beats Hannah Keane, who can't react in the nick of time. So maybe that's an indicator that it's Western Sydney's day.
85th minute of this one with the Wanderers holding on to that 2-1 lead at the moment as we recap the scores around the ground and have a look at McKellar Park as well, where the home side, Canberra United, lead the Newcastle Jets 4-1. The Jets, the last team on the score sheet, but still a wee bit of work to do there at McKellar Park. And at Wanderers Football Park, it is Western Sydney 2, Western United 1. Had we mentioned, Gigi, actually, that it is the winning team in this equation that buys the beverages at Dub Zone post-game drinks today?
I don't remember.
No, I'm pretty sure we locked that in.
No,
that's tradition, isn't it, team?
You're buying for everyone.
Yeah,
that was definitely something that was discussed.
This is a stitch-up. This
100% a stitch-up. Have the Wanderers got this one stitched up, though, Teo, at Wanderers Football
Here's
Park?
another angle of that cross that was so close to TJ Vlanich and so close to going in itself. And it all went... Now, what's going on here? Mark Torcaso's got himself a yellow card. So he's coach of the month and he's got a yellow card.
A trophy and a yellow all in the one day.
Maybe he can get the ref to hand over the card at the end of the game as well. But clearly something was said, and Kelly Jones not having a bar of it, so good refereeing. All right, corner kick for Western Sydney. Grace, it's the 88th minute. Do they drop anchor here and start standing over the ball, or do you think they try to score a third here and stop this Western United comeback?
Well, I would have thought they were going to go short and just try and waste time, manage this game out for the last couple of minutes. But it looks as though this is perhaps gone out for another corner. And for Western Sydney Wanderers now, this is a test of their gamesmanship, how smart they are, how good they are with the ball for this last 2.5 minutes of regulation time and then whatever added, because this is theirs to take the full 3 points if they have the smarts about them, the game smarts, to see this out to the end.
Is that Amy Harrison standing over the other corner? She's an experienced player, Teo. She knows, she's been in this situation.
And puts it into the near post here. Wanderers, they are chasing that third goal, but they can't get it. It's scrambled away. Second time ball in from Harrison. And the flick header, that was Bolden there, trying to challenge. And then in comes Kush LaRue, but can't impact the ball, and so it bounces out. But hey, they're down the right end. 2 minutes of regulation to go. There hasn't been drinks breaks in this one, so we don't think there's going to be a huge amount of stoppage time. But you're right, this is a test of game management here. Melbourne City weren't able to peg a goal back and make Wanderers manage the game. Wanderers, if anything were like flowing forwards, almost scoring a third, because they were on top at the end of last week, whereas this is a far more tense battle with only 1 goal the difference. And now Western United might be away, but Claire Hunt with a little slip, but is able to go and, not recover the ball. Lagazo on the scene, and these are the nerves. This is the pressure.
You can't be doing that around the
Well, some people were saying 4-4 draw. What do we reckon? Newcastle, can they go the end of the field here in stoppage time and do a bit of repair on the goal difference, or are Canberra going to pile on the misery? Ball over on the left. This is Emma Ilioski dropping a ball in for Vesna Milivojevic. My fantasy team is going to the top. Milivojevic.
Wait, Neve, and you call me biased?
Well, we were just talking about it. So, I mean, again, we were literally just talking about how Vesna Milivojevic may be unloved and forgotten by Australia, capped for Serbia, scores another goal, 5-1 to Canberra.
Not loved and unforgotten by Teo Palizzeri.
Exactly right. That's my thoughts. I've got to say, you Jets fans are really funny on the Twitter, saying things like 5-1, no problem, premiership run starts now. Someone said 5-1, it's still ours to lose.
Well, the thing is, though, Murphy Agnew and Sarah Griffith have come back today. We've seen Griffith buzzing around off the bench in the second half. Newcastle, to their credit, 11 shots, 5 on target, in the second half. Canberra have actually had to absorb quite a lot of Newcastle attacking in this second 45, but it's just lacked the quality in order to turn it into a proper comeback. We'll just stay with Western here. They've got numbers flowing forward, and it's well defended by Western Sydney to avoid conceding the corner at least. Taranto, though, is there. Now Legazzo can make something happen. Stacey Papadopoulos crossing it in. And now Keane at the near post. It's a real scramble. Here's the follow-up from Taranto. Deflected. And Jordan Bloomer prevents an own goal. It's out for a corner. Oh, boy, that was close.
What a save that was from Bloomer. Just pushing that one over the crossbar.
This is quite stressful.
It is very stressful.
Imagine how the Wanderers fans are feeling then. So corner kick coming up here. TJ Vlanich runs over to swing it in for Western United. They've got so many tall targets to aim for. This is what the team is built for, this sort of situation. In it comes and crashing through, not able to actually impact the ball. And so Wanderers exhale, but this was manic.
This was manic, just chaos in the middle of the park there, shots, touches, and this save. It's a really good quality save as well. But what we're getting is a look at Western United, desperation in a way that we haven't seen from them before, because they are chasing this game with every last breath they've got.
They're not in there, Teo, going, we're 7 from 7, we drop a point here, it's not a couple of points here, it's not a big deal. They want to continue this run.
Yeah, well, and not just that, the Premier's Plate, this is vital here because Melbourne City, they lost to Wanderers. Melbourne Victory, they've got the derby tomorrow. They're still backing their chances of getting up to the top of the league. It really throws things wide open because Sydney FC, of course, have come off that defeat as well to Western United during the week. So the table is absolutely a logjam up the top at the moment. And this could just leave the door ajar for all the chasing pack to come back against Western United. Full-time in Canberra, 5-1. Milivojevic ices the cake there. Comprehensive win at McKellar Park. Newcastle, again, going at worse than 3 goals a game conceded. They need some new ideas, unfortunately. But we are deep in stoppage time here, Grace. What's the shout from Cat Smith on the sideline now to try and calm things down? Surely they drop anchor and go into time-wasting protocol here.
Look, there have to be. It has to be really smart, disciplined, and this is where the leaders of this team, Western Sydney, need to step up, slow things down. Here, Bloomer on the ball. She might get herself a yellow card, but she's got to take as long as she can here in these final moments.
So Jordan Bloomer, a long way out from the net here. She's got to make sure she strikes this truly and doesn't shank it to an opponent and is able to hit the sideline, but they're not able to keep it in. And so still, we're waiting just to find out how many minutes of stoppage time was signalled here. We've played,
I believe it was 4.
4, so they're running out of time. 2.5, now 1.5 to go. Edge of the box, Kush LaRue buzzing around, spills the ball. Here's a shot to seal it. And that was Ella Abdul-Masih, I think, off the bench, who had that chance to make it 3-1 and put the game to rest. No, it was Sienna Silvesca, in fact. So the youngster in just her second appearance. That was a great chance for Wanderers. Now Western can go end-to-end. Vlanich looking for Keane, but it just slides along, and that'll take us down to the final minute. And so here's another look. Sienna Silvesca, only 16 years old. Rue spilt the ball. Silvesca is a left footer and had scored a few goals from that sort of distance just outside the box or at the top of the area in the NPL. So that's actually her bread and butter, but she wasn't able to beat the keeper and find the corner. And so Western is still going. Legazzo. Now Hannah Keane trying to hurdle through the defenders, made a couple of them disappear. That's a handball and a free kick. And if Wanderers are smart here, that might get them to the finish line.
Teo, there are some really funny comments in here, all at you. Teo Pellizzeri, it's a fantasy team you barrack for. Your conflict of interest here is considerable.
That was from Joey Lynch, and I love that he backed you in as Mr. NPLW Victoria. But in terms of fantasy football, he's clearly stinging. Is he below you on the ladder?
Are you proud of yourself, Joey?
He'd love that. He'd love it.
All right, so here's the restart from Jordan Bloomer. 15 seconds. Wanderers holding on. They've got the ball down the right end. Western United need to go end-to-end. They've got the wind behind them, if nothing else. Angie Beard, can they just launch it long? Trying to keep the unbeaten streak going. The winning streak will come to an end. And the unbeaten streak comes to an end as well. Western Sydney Wanderers, this team that has come from the clouds to knock off title contenders in consecutive games. Look at what it means to them. And all of a sudden, there is a big, big sound from the west of this town, but it's the Western Sydney Wanderers that are making their move in the A-League Women's. And you know what? After beating 2 top teams in consecutive games, I'm going to call it now, they are absolutely in the top 4 conversation to make a run in the back half of the season.
Well, we heard it here first, folks, from Teo Pellizzeri. Top 4 conversation, but what a performance from Western Sydney Wanderers to turn that around. 2 amazing results in as many weeks and as many appearances, but That's a wonderful performance, and despite you breaking the no-Sharon rule, Teo will let you off on that occasion.
Kat Smith beats Mark Torcaso for the first time since 2018.
Wow.
What a great coaching performance from the Wanderers, not just today, but in these last 2 games.
Yeah, you can't take anything away from that. That's just really incredible to turn around some of those previous results. The last 2, they've got a lot to be proud of with that.
There's a comment from Stephen Paletti. They said, for the first time in 689 days, the Wanderers have back-to-back wins. February 18 and 25, 2021 was the last time this happened. What an achievement.
It is a remarkable victory for the Wanderers. Teo, how much do you put it down to the resilience under Kat Smith that they've shown, and how much to the addition of Serena Bolden, who has been remarkable?
It has been remarkable. I mean, it's the obvious catalyst, but as we were discussing, they finally got to their best 11. You know, the reason they were good today is they made one change to the team that beat Melbourne City. They're not still rotating through a squad. They've used well over 20 players this season already to get to this point. Probably suggests that they may have been able to get here earlier, but they're here now. They're making an impact. And we saw the crowd today. We saw the crowd against Melbourne City. They fill Wanderers Football Park. Wanderers want a winning team to get around. They want a team that excites them. And you look at the reaction there at full time and the celebration of those players, you know, Harrison, Keir, Bolden. It means so much to them. And I think that will be reflected in the stands as well. And those stands are only going to get more and more full as word gets out that Wanderers have finally got a winning team again.
Well, you can see they've done their tinkering now, and you can just see what it means to that group of girls. And when you've got togetherness like that, that is a really tough thing to combat.
They had more shots on target than Western United today. This hasn't happened by accident, Teo. Amy Harrison said during the week they could have beaten Melbourne City by more, and that they absolutely were taking confidence into another a clash against a top-of-the-table side.
And I have to admire how they closed out the game. A couple of times there, Grace, I said, when are they going to drop anchor? When are they going to start defending? If anything, the last chance of the game was Sienna Savesco having that shot which Hilary Beale had to save. So I think there's an exuberance and sort of like a handbrake off approach to this Wanderers team. And I tell you what, I know Melissa Caceres wasn't in the squad today, but she had scored 2 of their 3 goals when they only had 3 goals in the first 7 games. When she's fit, when she's back, that's another dimension to add to this team. And who knows, if there's a club again, I know I mentioned it with regards to Canberra, but if the Wanderers want to put themselves over the top, make that top 4, guest marquee. If there's a team that can do it, I think Western Sydney Wanderers also need to just start putting the feelers out for who they can target for a guest marquee contract in the back half of the season.
Also changes, the dynamic and complexion of their next game and the excitement around that. It's not, are the Wanderers going to lose again? It's, how are the Wanderers going to go? Are they going to score first? Are they going to hold on to the lead? It completely changes the dimension
I'm starting to think that, you know, Wanderers have been John Malkovich Adelaide here and have just taken everything that was great about Adelaide and taken it for themselves, and they're now living that life from the bottom half of the table. And here's Adelaide, who won 4 of their first 5 games, and they're just sinking like a stone. But that's what we love about this league, and that's what we love about it. We're still in the mindset of treating this competition like a super series, where every 3 points is, you know, obviously very important even in an 18-game season. But back when it was 10 or 12 or last season 14 games, it was so much more cutthroat. Now you have time to evolve over the course of the season and for new trends and new patterns to emerge.
Absolutely, and what a turnaround from them as well. It completely changes their second half of the season at the halfway point. And to their fortune, the season is now long enough that they can turn things around. There is still time. It's not a case of, they'll have a couple of wins and they'll finish the season on a high. No, there's still plenty of time for the Wanderers to really come back into this tournament, into this season, turn things around and climb back up to the top of the table.
Are you this excited about a Wanderers victory, or just that your fantasy team has gone gangbusters today? Because you are up and about now, Teo.
You know the answer to that, Nevo.
I am very excited about a Wanderers team where maybe as they kept signing players through pre-season, I would keep quote tweeting them and say, yeah, that's a good signing, that's a good signing, that's a good signing, and then they lost their first 7 games. So, you know, look, I think that it's exciting because this is a team that has a fan base that wants to cheer for them, that wants to love this team, and had felt unloved in return by the performances of the Western Sydney Wanderers for the last however many seasons, ever since they had that 1 year under Dean Heffernan where they had the American imports come out, they made the top 4, they actually had a breakthrough and thought that they were turning the corner, and then it was kind of back to, you know, Sydney FC eats first in New South Wales, Western Sydney Wanderers and Newcastle and Canberra squabble over who else is available, right? They need to flip this dynamic. You know, they need to back themselves and start building something special that isn't looked at entirely through the prism of Sydney FC as the benchmark in this league, we're chasing them. they need to make themselves the benchmark now.
There are so many comments about the Wanderers. People are honestly stoked by this result, saying it's a miracle not only that Western United were doing what they're doing, but then Western Sydney Wanderers were the ones to break the winning streak. I think it's such a cool story. They've changed the narrative, like you said, Grace. But my question to you is based off Kieran Yap's tweet. He says, is Serena Bolden to Western Sydney Wanderers the A-League women's equivalent of Maradona to Napoli?
I mean, Wanderers want idols and players to love. They do. It's a fan base, and we saw it in the stands today. Young crowd, enthusiastic crowd. We saw Brianna out there conducting the interviews, rallying those kids. It's a diverse crowd. I mean, we saw it with the mini roos and the different clubs and the mascots. You saw the variety in the faces, you know, of the youngsters in that region. Serena Bolden is probably the perfect player to go out there and be emblematic of this team starting to become a serious contender.
I think you've just identified the difference actually there, Teo. We will have clubs texting, tweeting, writing in to say, can Brianna Goodchild please come to our home games in future? Because
she's 2 from 2.
Where Brianna goes, the home team will.
Hang on. Wellington are going to want her across the ditch then. So David Dome, if you're watching, just Brianna Goodchild, get her over to Wellington and they'll get their breakthrough win, we hope.
That is where the future is. We're going to have a look at the highlights from both games in just a moment's time. Let's head to McKellar Park to begin with, where Canberra United got the win over the Newcastle Jets. And as they so often do, Teo, the Jets leaking goals early.
They did, and we said today was a take care of business sort of a game for Canberra, and they did so with a real cutting edge. Michelle Heyman got it all started, but Nikki Flannery Grace was pulling the strings and central to so much of this. Heyman finishes with a double. Brush, Wu Cheng-Shu with her first A-League women's goal. Vesna Milivojevic got the icing on the cake. Goal and an assist for Milivojevic, only the one assist for Flannery, but she's in every highlight in the build-up play.
Yeah, she is. She's been really involved. And this is important for Flannery too, because coming back from her ACL surgery, she had a bit of a slow start to the season, a bit of frustration starting to creep in. But now she's starting to come back to sort of Nikki Flannery in full flight that we really love to watch playing. And Michelle Heyman as well. We know that a happy Michelle Heyman is a goal scorer in Michelle Heyman. And I'm sure with 2 to her name today, that could just open up the banks a little bit.
The Jets' defence is just a disaster. I mean, they've conceded 5 today from 3.56 XG. I mean, they've got the worst differential between XG created against and goals conceded. They've also got the highest XG conceded in the league already. So opposition teams are scoring even more than what they're creating against them. It is just an avalanche of goals against. I mean, how must Adelaide feel? Newcastle beat them 2-0. I mean, and that was like a 1-week break from what has otherwise been just relentlessly conceding goals. And if they thought they had the answers, unfortunately for them, they don't.
It's surprising for me as well, because you've got a player like Taryn King there who is so experienced, so level-headed. In front of her, Cass Davis, the most, long-standing player in terms of consecutive appearances in our league and in the men's as well. And for that to be broken down as easily it has been for the Newcastle Jets, really, really worrying signs.
And a difficult start to the season, a very difficult time for Ash Wilson as coach, Teo. The Jets have been disappointing in recent years without the best roster in the league, admittedly. But she's looking for answers at the moment, and it feels like struggling to find them, particularly with the way they're conceding early goals in every game they play.
Can I say that Newcastle had at least outdone my expectations by winning 2 games? I mean, beating Adelaide was a result that I never would have predicted. And yet, on their bad days, they look exactly like, unfortunately, the team that the squad they compiled perhaps was going to return this season. And I think it's the fact they've teased us and they've shown us what they look like on a good day is what really ramps home. If it was this every week, a bit like, Wellington struggling to get off the foot of the table, we might be a little bit more charitable. But Newcastle have shown us what they can do on their game and on their day. And that's what makes the leaky defence and the lack of solutions to these problems so much more frustrating.
It's been really unfortunate for them as well that they've had difficulties in injuries. Agnew, Griffith, some of their best players not being able to play continuously due to a few bits and pieces there. So with those kind of players involved, do you think that the team could be a little bit more solid through the middle of the park and maybe produce some more teasing results, Teo? But nonetheless, a frustrating situation for Ash Wilson to be in.
And a situation that Canberra United took advantage of in spectacular fashion at McKellar Park today. It was a victory that the locals will absolutely have loved, and a key part of that was striker Michelle Heyman with a brace. Michelle, good to see you. Congratulations on the win. Talk us through that from a player's perspective, because it looked like at times you guys were having an absolute field day out there.
Well, it's one thing that Canberra can do is create chances. Every game we've been getting 17 to 18 chances per game. So it's finally nice to start finally finishing them. And I feel like we've finally got the confidence as a group to know that we can score goals and everyone can do it. So I think Nikki Flannery, 2 assists from out wide was just incredible today. So I'm just feeling extremely happy and proud of them because we really needed those 3 points.
Michelle, well done today. Well done on your 2 goals as well. Tell me about McKellar Park. How were the fans today? I mentioned to the guys here on the couch how noisy and loud they can be. Did they show up in form today?
Yeah, they definitely showed up. The feeling of playing here. So it's just the best feeling ever. And you always want to get the 3 points for them. And, to the last minute, they were cheering us on. So to have that support definitely helps pushes us into, for Vesna to get that last one in was just incredible. And the crowd loved it. So can't wait for our next home game.
Michelle, it's fitting you mentioned Flannery there because for us on the couch, it was obvious how involved she was in all the build-up. You're training with her. You're working with her every day. How close is she back to her absolute best? Because obviously that injury struck her when she was in a Matilda's camp.
Yeah, definitely. I think, she's growing confidence every game that we play. The one thing that we constantly try and tell her is just to take people on because she is super speedy down that flank. So if she can just remember to keep cool and to just do the thing that she does, it's always going to be successful. So I think physical wise, she's fantastic. I think it's more down to, mental side of things of just trying to feel like yourself again and to think that you can do it. So I'm super proud of her. I'm always in the back of her head telling her how great she is. So I'm just trying to build up that confidence and just, today she played full confidence and it was just incredible.
And you're up to 5 goals for the season now, only 1 off the top of the Golden Boot. Results didn't go your way in that respect elsewhere today, but you're close. We'd be remiss not to ask you the follow-up. You said pre-season you still want to aim for the Matildas. How do you assess it now? 9 games is the halfway point, so you're nearly halfway through the season. Do you think you're going to get a phone call ahead of this February window and the 3 Matildas games?
Probably not going to lie. I'm just going to continue doing what's best for Canberra United. I think Grace said it before. A smiling Michelle is a happy Michelle, and that's when I usually score the goals. So I'm going to continue to just try and have the best time on the field and just do my job and to do it well. I think I've got the confidence now and the ball's finally finding the back of the net. So for myself personally, it's just making sure that I'm in the right spot at the right time to score those goals. And today, literally, they both just fell to me. So I'm pretty lucky with that.
Well, it's good to see you smiling, Michelle. And your smile absolutely brought a smile from Grace Gill here beside us on the couch. Your brace today. Congratulations on the win, mate. We'll speak to you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Michelle Heyman, the captain of Canberra United, joining us after Canberra United's 5-1 victory over the Newcastle Jets at McKellar Park today. As we head back to Wanderers Football Park now, where the Wanderers made it 2 back-to-back wins in a row. They beat Melbourne City last week, they beat Western United today and broke Western United's 7-game unbeaten start to the Liberty A-League season. Serena Bolden was a crucial part of that, and we are going to be able to speak to Serena Bolden at Wanderers Football Park now. Serena, it is so lovely to have you on the show. Congratulations on a wonderful start to your Liberty A-League life. How are you enjoying football with the Wanderers so far?
Well, it's been an unbelievable start, 2 wins since I've been here, and we just beat the 7-winning streak of Western United, and the fact that I was able to get a goal was kind of like icing on the cake. Should have had a little bit more, but I'm really happy, really excited, and just very pleased with what we've done so far.
Serena, you've exploded into this league. You're so sharp, you're so fit, you look like you're up to match speed immediately. What's been your approach? And what have Wanderers done to allow you to show us your best right from the off?
I think trainings have just been high intensity. Everyone's competing to make each other better, and that's ultimately what's been kind of helping me, show my best at these games. So it's, thank you to my teammates for making me better, but I'm also pushing to make them better. So it's those trainings that I think is the secret sauce to these 2 wins so far.
And obviously, you're no stranger to both Wanderers Football Park and Australia because training camps and friendly matches have been here. Alan Stajic was in the stands again today, keeping a close eye on things. This World Cup is a motivating factor. What's it doing to motivate you, but also all your Philippines teammates?
I mean, it's the World Cup. I just want to keep preparing as best I can, and I think being on Wanderers is the best thing I can do for myself, and that's why I'm here. And just looking to get those wins helps in that preparation for the World Cup.
Speaking of that, you guys, the Philippines team, you qualified for the first time, which is just so exciting. Talk us through what that felt like when you guys achieved that.
Oh my God. I think it's almost been a year since that's happened, or, a lot of months has gone by, and it still feels like the first time we qualified. It feels like just yesterday, and I can't really put into words. It's kind of, I can't say exactly how I feel, but it's unbelievable to be the first Philippines men and women's team to qualify the World Cup. It's just surreal, and every day I'm very grateful for the position that I'm in and with my teammates, and we just want to continue to get better, and we have a lot of things coming up. And again, playing in this A-League, I think is just really great preparation for that World Cup.
Bringing it back to the A-Leagues then, Serena, is this the start of big things from the Wanderers? Is this the push up the table into the top 4 in finals football?
Absolutely. This isn't a fluke. How can you tell me that the second to last team in the league beats the 2 top teams in the A-League? Like, that just doesn't happen on a fluke. And, there's been a little shift in the team, and there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of passion, a lot of hard work that these girls have, and we are in emotion. We have the momentum going forward. We just stopped Western United's momentum, and we literally took it from them. We had to; they were us, and now we have the momentum. So just keep an eye on us, and we're going to do some great things.
We absolutely will do exactly that. Serena Bolden, congratulations on the win today. Congrats on your start to the Liberty A-League. You are bringing awesome things, and it's brilliant to see.
Thank you so much.
Serena Bolden joining us there, and with exactly, Teo, the kind of fighting talk that Western Sydney Wanderers fans will love to hear.
Absolutely brilliant. What a day on the Dub Zone. And don't forget, it continues tomorrow. Melbourne Derby, 1 of 3 games. We're spoilt this weekend.
3 games to go tomorrow. Teo Palazzari, Kat Haddad, Grace Gill, so good to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us on Dub Zone. Thank you for joining us on Dub Zone at home as well. We've loved your contributions throughout the week. Keep them coming. #Dub Zone. We hope you enjoyed the football today. Don't forget, on 10 Play and Paramount Plus, we've got 3 games coming up for you tomorrow, including the Melbourne Derby, Melbourne City up against Melbourne Victory. We'll see you for more football very soon.